You're in the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
With Gene and Chris on the Paracast, we've got a really fascinating episode today, kind of a retrospective. You know, when we look back on the work of a somewhat recently departed UFO or paranormal researcher and cover the things that they discovered. And the reason we do that is because we don't progress anywhere in this crazy field if we don't understand what has come before. Otherwise, you have lots of young people who unfortunately repeat the same mistakes. I mean, there was a post in one of our forums just, a week or two ago back, where the poster was suggesting that maybe we don't want to hear about the 60-year plus cases. And I can understand with Roswell that sometimes that has gone too far, although the Roswell slides is still something that is getting a lot of coverage and we have to keep up with what may or may not happen. But again, it's about learning the lessons of history. Otherwise, they repeat the same old mistakes. Am I wrong in that, Chris?
No, I don't think you are. I think what's important for people that are, coming into the field at this late date, especially younger people, they need to be pointed towards proper sourcing. And shows like ours, Mysterious Universe, Micah Hanks show, Greg Bishop show, these would be good places to start going through the archives and getting yourself up to speed and keeping a notebook and a pen handy so that when a book is mentioned that is being recommended by someone who, you would think being in the field for X amount of years that the before mentioned folks would have all kinds of recommendations for resource materials to bring yourself up to speed. I think Richard Dolan's new book, UFOs in the 21st Century Mind, is a really good entry-level book that puts not only the ufological subject into a cultural context, it also puts it into a political context. And, Richard has done a great job in that book. And of course, there are other books too. Get a copy of, John Keel's Operation Trojan Horse, I think is an excellent entry-level book. The UFO Experience by J. Allen Hynek. These are books that once you read these books, then it points you in particular directions into the realm of an Ivan Sanderson or a Len Stringfield, some of the early pioneers in the field that have their work has so much information and there's so much in there that a young person or somebody newly interested in the field could really sink their teeth into and get a real quick education. That way, when you tune into shows like the Paracast, you're not going to be sitting here scratching your head going, what are they talking about? So, another person that did not write any books, but was one of our best researchers and investigators, and most importantly, one of our finest networkers pre-internet, was the subject of our show today, Mr. Tom Adams, Thomas R. Adams, which I think the R, we never could figure out what it stood for. He would never say, but I guess it's Richard.
Well, a lot of times people have middle initials that have no real definition. Okay, Harry S. Truman, what did the S stand for?
Stanislaw.
Forrest J. Ackerman, the famed science fiction fan and critic and collector.
Yeah, I can't help you with that one.
The answer is that it didn't stand for anything.
Oh, okay.
So maybe Thomas R. Adams there. Well, we can't obviously call him back unless we get the Ouija board to work.
No, unfortunately, it's a real loss, but we'll get into some of the very interesting aspects of Tom's life and how instrumental he was for me personally. I counted him among my most important and closest associates when it came to getting my lame ass up to speed when I first started out in 93. Writing a simple article for my local newspaper, and who would have thought that all you had to do was sprinkle some water on it, and there was this weird kind of career that sort of came out of nowhere. But Tom was really instrumental, and our guest today, David Perkins, knew Adams all the way back into the mid-'70s, into 75, and David spent a lot of time with him. They did a lot of road trips, and we're going to get into some really, historical and very compelling information about their work and how all this dovetailed to the next generation of researchers, among whom I count myself. So This is going to be a bittersweet, but we want to honor the man and not get too depressed at his passing. But he was very, very important to me.
I didn't know him well, but our paths crossed frequently because I worked with people who worked with him and occasionally did have contact with him. So we'll leave it at that. Let's just catch up on a couple of things before we split for our break, and then we bring on David Perkins. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of interest in Chris's San Luis Valley camera project. You're getting a few donations, offers of help. That's moving along. Maybe you can give us a quick update?
Yeah, we have a new person has stepped up. We lost our initial base station location because of bandwidth issues. But a guy has stepped up who lives east of Alamosa, has just a wonderful view of Blanca and the sand dunes from his property. He works for Comcast, so he knows everyone in the valley that has anything to do with communications. He's going to be an invaluable member of the team. He's all excited about getting involved, establishing the base station at his property with the recording magnetometer, reporting gravitometer, our acoustic experiments, obviously our EMF sensors, the all sky cam, the all important all sky cam, which will be the trigger point for events for the other cameras to then wheel around and follow the action. And so this is a major step forward. I also had about a 2-hour talk with Mark D'Antonio, who, of course, as many of our listeners know, was on the show a short time back. And he's the chief video analyst for MUFON. But he's also the right-hand man in the UFOTOG project with Douglas Trumbull. And that conversation was very interesting to hear the state of the art of their particular process of putting together hard data sensing arrays. They're talking about gamma readers and cameras that go all the way to the infrared and can be used during the daytime. Just amazing amounts of work that's going into their project. And we both agreed that we should dovetail our efforts to some degree and help each other out. I made the joke to Mark, too bad Douglas still doesn't have that Hummer, because I could tell him where to park it. Because I always felt that was probably the big issue. He had this $1 million Hummer and scratching his head trying to think of a place to park it. So I'm really, pleased to hear about their progress, and pleased to finally get a chance to get some quality time with Mark and go over some of the particulars. Some of the software applications they're going to be using may be made available, and probably will be made available to other projects like mine. I'm really looking forward to a team approach at this, and it's exciting because this, to me, is a true step forward for the field. No one has ever done this before, to our knowledge, and this is going to be historic and groundbreaking.
If someone wants more information about the San Luis Valley Camera Project, where do they check it out?
We're going to get a site up that'll have the streaming image from the array. But prior to that, you can contact me through the Paracast, or you can contact me at COB, C-O-B, at TMV, which is the initials for the Mysterious Valley, tmv.us.
All right. COB at tmv.us, us. And no spam, please. Okay? Just a reminder. A reminder, too, that we have a second radio show that we do each and every week, and we've been doing it for close to 6 months now. It's called After the Paracast, but there's only one way to get it. Go to plus.theparacast.com, plus.theparacast.com. Sign up for our subscription. For Paracast Plus, you get After the Paracast, an enhanced version of this show, free of the network ads, higher quality audio, for a modest monthly fee. If you subscribe to a year or more, you get a free copy of the ebook version of Stalking the Tricksters from Chris O'Brien that he has generously donated to the cause. He could make money with that, but he decided to let us give it away. Plus.theparacast.com, plus.theparacast.com. We remember Tom Adams with David Perkins and more. With Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast.
First came Attack of the Rockoids, and it was a critically acclaimed success. And now there's The Coming of the Protectors. A former military intelligence man is contacted by a space woman in a dream that turns out to be a nightmare because evil forces on her distant planet are planning to conquer the Earth. This is gripping science fiction of the classic kind. Attack of the Rockoids and the Coming of the Protectors. Find out more at rockoids.com. That's rockoids, ROCKOIDS.com.
So here's what happened. I was placing an order online. The site went down. It took hours before it returned, but I'd already placed the order with another company. If your site goes down, you could lose business. And if you have a business or personal site, you'll want to know it's easy to run and it will stay online. At iWeb, your site is hosted on one of the most reliable networks in the world. Talk to a sales rep at iWeb.com. Use the promo code TechNightOwl for a special discount.
Quantitative easing, unemployment at depression levels, Europe financial system falling apart, China getting out of U.S. treasuries. At the end of 2008, the time of TARP, the national debt was at $11 trillion, gold trading around $850 per ounce. Close to 2012, the national debt exceeded $16.4 trillion, gold doubled to $1,600 per ounce. The $20 trillion threshold for the national debt is inevitable. Politicians in Washington have a ferocious appetite for spending and stimulus. What's worse, a printing press to finance. 100 years ago, we had a gold standard to limit this madness, but now you have to adopt your own gold standard. Don't be fooled with paper promises. Get Midas Resources 10 Reasons to Buy Gold free by calling 800-686-2237. Understanding the gold and silver market may be the only insurance you could have to avoiding the next economic crisis. Call 1-800-686-2237 and order your free copy. Again, that's 800-686-2237.
Heart and Body Extract continues to receive positive testimonials from people who have experienced amazing results, like Reed.
I just wanted to send you a quick but a very big thank you for Heart and Body Extract. I've been on the formula for nearly a month now, and the improvement in the circulation of my legs has been simply amazing.
Reed was facing a tough choice.
I was facing surgery due to the severity of the 100% blocked arteries in both my legs. And my decision, waiting for surgery, to say no and try Heart and Body Extract instead, has been thankfully the right decision.
And the result?
I can now walk up steps without noticeable pain.
Order Heart and Body Extract at 866-295-5305, 866-295-5305, or hbextract.com. Heart and Body Extract for a long and healthy life.
Did you know that drinking pure, high alkaline water is one of the most important factors in maintaining high energy and vibrant health? Most experts agree that the water you drink should be at a pH level of 8 or higher. AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops, available only at alkavision.com, combine a unique formula of only the most alkaline minerals. AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops alkalize your water, ridding the body of harmful toxins, and helps you regain health and energy. Alkalizing your water by simply adding 10 drops of AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops helps the body rid itself of acidic waste, increases oxygen content, and raises the pH of your body to healthy levels. And bacteria and viruses cannot survive in an alkaline high pH environment. Order your bottle of AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops for only $29.95 at alkavision.com. That's ALKAvision.com. Or call 269-409-1776. 269-409-1776. Alkalize your body. Supercharge your health at alkavision.com today.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
This week on the Paracast, we remember another UFO paranormal researcher who is no longer with us, Tom Adams, who actually died last year. But it took a while before we all got the news. He wasn't somebody in the front of the headlines. He was one of those people who was like the worker bee, works behind the scenes, gets things done, and obviously interacted very closely with people like David Perkins, our guest this week, and Chris O'Brien. Also, my old friend Kurt Sutherly, who's been on the Paracast on a number of occasions, somebody that I worked with in the 70s and 80s, and he worked closely with Tom Adams. There was also another person who worked with Tom Adams, Chris, as you know, whom we've invited on the show on several occasions, but she, for some reason, never seems to be able to say yes. Or she says yes, but then you try to set a date, It never happens, Chris. What about that?
Well, when you're talking about Linda Howe, I just don't know what to say or even how to second guess her motivations to do things. Tom and David, really put her on the map with their just selfless help and many hours of getting her up to speed when she first started investigating for the local TV station where she worked as an environmental investigative reporter. And she wanted to do a story on the cattle mutilation mystery. And of course, the first place that she goes to are the two top experts in the field at the time, David Perkins and Tom Adams. And you would think someone that really owes a debt of gratitude to such a selfless researcher such as Adams would like to get on and possibly commiserate a little bit and honor his memory and tell a few neat war stories, which I'm sure she had more than a few. And I know David and I do. But, Linda's a busy lady. I could kind of give her an out and stuff. But if it had been me, I would have made every effort to get my schedule in line with a taping session. And I'm really disappointed that she didn't take us up on our offer.
So Linda Moulton Howe will not be here, but you know what? She's still invited. I know that there are areas where Chris and David disagree with her. I know I've disagreed with her. I think sometimes she accepts too many things. And that's unfortunate, but then, she's entitled to her opinion. And there you go.
And boy, does she have one.
Oh, yeah. Yes, she does. I just wish she'd come on and express it and answer legitimate criticisms. She's a broadcast professional. She's been doing this for 30 some odd years as a broadcaster.
40 years.
Pardon?
40 years, but who's counting?
Well, time flies when you're having fun. But having worked that long, I can't imagine that professional broadcaster would have problems answering any reasonable question. That's just me. Anyway.
Yeah, David, do you want to touch this one?
No. Okay.
But, David, I asked you a question and you answered. I never had a problem with that.
Right.
Ooh.
Oh, hi, Gene. Hi, Chris. And hi, Paracast people. It's good to be back on the show.
All right. Well, we love having you back, boy. We'd have you back a lot more if I could get a hold of you and pin you down. I know you're a busy guy. Thanks for being here.
We'll stay after it.
Yep. We will indeed.
Okay, let's talk about the real thing here. Okay. Tom Adams, how did you first encounter him?
Let's see. Chris posted a piece that I wrote on your board there, the late, great Tom Adams. And I recommend your listeners brush up on that particular piece because it does give a pretty detailed history of how we all got hooked up back in the 1970s. But it was when I started, I was just thinking before the show, I basically started into this investigation almost 40 years ago, coming up in this fall, in fall of 75. Colorado was mute central at that point, just hundreds of cases. And that's when I started getting interested, collecting clippings, interviewing ranchers, sheriffs, and so on. So right off the bat, one of the first names I ran into when I was out in the field was, have you talked to Tom Adams? Well, have you talked to Tom Adams? Who's Tom Adams? Oh, he's the guy that's coordinating all of this stuff, and he's somebody you should definitely talk to. So I heard that so many times from sheriffs, ranchers, whatever, that it wasn't long before I figured out how to get a hold of Tom Adams, and we hit it off pretty fast. I could tell he was serious, competent, and he was definitely somebody that I wanted to be in touch with. So I'm not quite sure when we actually made our first contact. It must have been in 76 is what I'm figuring, 1976. And then I don't think we actually met until either later that year or early 77 when he and his partner, Gary Massey, made a trip up to Colorado to keep working on investigating the Snippy case in the San Luis Valley. I think that's the first time that we met face to face, although we corresponded and talked on the phone quite a bit before that. So that got us off and running. He came by where I was living in the community, Libre in Colorado. I think he was kind of vetting me. He was on his way over to stay at Burl Lewis's cabin and meet up with some folks. Burl, of course, being the husband of Nellie Lewis, whose horse Snippy was the first classic mutilation, or you might say. They're having a little powwow up on the mountain over there. Let's see, in the Sangres overlooking San Luis Valley. There were some other folks there, Leo Sprinkle and Peter Van Arsdale and John Durr, who were all real early investigators into this stuff. So he dropped by to see me and see if I was okay to include in that group. And he said, well, why don't you come over and join us the next day? And we're having an all-day session over there. And you come on over and bring your wife, Carrie, and we'll all get together. So that's when we first really started down this road, somewhere right around that time. I haven't looked back, I guess. 40 years later, I've never been closer to the answer.
Did Tom Adams have a day job of any significance or what? Tell us more about the person.
A job? You mean like a workaday world job?
Kind of, sort of like that.
Well,
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, so yeah, he had a job. His main job, I'm not sure when he actually started that job. It was working for a company that made the little crystal beads that you see on highway signs. It's kind of microscopic type reflecting beads, which I always thought was kind of an interesting job, I guess. But he worked in the office. He was an accountant type, so that was his main livelihood.
So he was a regular working stiff who happened to explore the paranormal, which is true about a lot of these people who get involved. Something becomes their hobby, quite often takes over their lives. David Perkins is joining us this week, a longtime paranormal investigator specializing in calendar mutilations. Joining Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast. A little right, a little left, but always independent-minded. The Genesis Communications Network, GCN.
Is there a secret UFO agenda? Do strange creatures from the darkest corners of the mind roam the earth? Is there evidence for mind control, time travel, or devious government conspiracies? Find out the inside scoop on the latest conspiracies, paranormal activity, and Fortean phenomena when you subscribe to Tim Beckley's Conspiracy Journal. It's jam-packed with stories, special book and DVD promotions, and the best news, it's absolutely free, sent right to your mailbox. Plus, a bonus free email newsletter sent out every Friday. Simply send an email with your name and address to Mr. UFO at webtv.net. That's Mr. UFO at webtv.net. Find out what they don't want you to know.
By now, you may have heard a bit about Bitcoins, but did you know Bitcoins are now over an $8.5 billion market? And did you know that over 65,000 businesses now accept Bitcoins? Listen, if you're already earning Bitcoins or trying to make money in the Bitcoin market, you've got to know bidbit.co. Why? Because bidbit.co is where you can easily receive Bitcoins by selling and auctioning off your own personal items or promote business products and services for Bitcoins. You heard right. Whether personal or business, you can now buy, sell, and auction your products and services quickly, easily, and securely for Bitcoin at bidbit.co, the first and only marketplace website to offer BidBit Escrow, a proprietary technology which gives buyers and sellers security and peace of mind because all transactions are protected. Start today. It's free to join, free to post, free to auction, and free to bid at bidbit.co. Buy, sell, bid, or auction everything Bitcoin. That's www.bidbit.co, bidbit.co.
Don't Don't complain about your cable bill going up and up and up. Do something about it. Grab a pencil and jot down this special number, 1-855-905-MY-TV. The more cable TV rates go up, the better digital satellite TV looks. Say goodbye to the cable guy and get more of your favorite channels in 100% digital quality for less money. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. Sign up for packages starting as low as $19.99, and there's no equipment to buy. You get free HD TV upgrade, a free DVR upgrade, and free professional installation. You control what you watch when you watch it. Record your favorite shows, pause and rewind live TV, even skip the commercials. Watch local channels too. At just $19.99, what are you waiting for? Pull out your major credit or debit card. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV. Say goodbye to the cable guy. Cut costs and get more. 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV.
This alert just came in. This special announcement is for business owners and leaders of organizations who've been waiting for the right time to build. General Steel has made it impossible to wait any longer with rock-bottom prices that could save you thousands. That's right, General Steel, America's leader in pre-engineered structures, is offering buildings at prices you will never see again. Don't miss these prices. A 50 by 100 for $35,000. You heard right. That's 5,000 square feet for $35,000. Manufacturers, if you need a larger building, try a 100 by 100 commercial building for $129,000. You can't afford to rent with these prices. Imagine a 70 by 100-foot church building for under $69,000. With the economy improving and interest rates still at historic lows, you can't afford to wait. So call 866-91-STEEL. Lock in your price now. Call 866-91-STEEL. That's 866-917-8335.
This is Jerome Clark, author of the UFO Encyclopedia and other books. You're listening to the Paracast.
So Tom Adams, as many people who are down and dirty into the UFO and paranormal fields, was one of these go-to people, the person you go to if you want to get all the information about some of the great cattle mutilation mysteries. And David Perkins is joining us this week as they remember him. Chris, let me ask you the question, though. When did you first encounter Tom Adams?
Well, again, like David, I think I mentioned several times on the show about the New Year's Eve party that I gave December 31st, 92, where towards the end of the party, every little group of people in all, three rooms where people were hanging out, we're all talking about the same UFO sighting. And I don't think very many people knew how many others had actually also witnessed these 200-foot ovals that came down out of the mountains, hovered over the town, and zipped off to the south. I was fascinated by this because I had been gone that weekend. That had happened the prior Thanksgiving Day weekend, and I was really fascinated. And at the time, I was writing for a little local paper, and so I started taking notes, thinking, "Hey, this could be a good story." And right as I was bringing everybody together and telling them, "Hey, did you know these people all saw the same thing you did?" And these people, somebody chimed in. Actually, Charlotte Heyer, I remember who it was, chimed in and said, "Oh, that was the same night there was a cattle mutilation down in Costilla County." Well, like David said, I've never looked back since. And, I quickly started making phone calls. The first phone call I made actually was to Burl Lewis, who was still alive, living down at the Great Sand Dunes Country Club. He was actually the maintenance guy down there. And so I had a pretty extensive phone conversation with him. And one of the first things he told me was, well, if you really want to know about this stuff, you got to call them Texas boys, Tom and Gary. And I said, "Oh, yeah?" And he says, "Yeah." And he gave me their Tom's number. And he said, and also that TV lady, Linda, you should talk to her, too, because she knows a lot about this stuff. So, I'm thinking to myself, I'm totally wet behind the ears. I really have very little knowledge about the subject. Of course, I knew about cattle mutilations. I had followed articles in the paper in the 70s when I was in college. And so I was kind of aware of the phenomenon, but I thought it was all ancient history. I didn't know these cases were still occurring. So I called Tom, and I'll never forget those first few conversations. I spent many hours on the phone with him. And the first thing that I really got loud and clear from him was that this small kind of close-knit group of researchers and investigators who had been following this and investigating these cases since the mid-'70s were hoping someday somebody would show up in the San Luis Valley with enough interest and motivation to do some serious field work. And so he was elated. You know, it wasn't until several years later that I found out that he had really pulled back from the field in the early 90s, from 89 through 92. He wasn't as active as he was. I think he was a little disillusioned. I think there was, and we'll talk about some of the personal issues that he was also going through during this time period. But I think my enthusiasm and my ability to follow through with leads that he gave me, I think really impressed him enough for him to get re-energized about this. And he became my go-to guy for the next 2 or 3 months. At this point, David had lost his wife, Carrie, and was in the South Pacific. So, Tom says, as soon as Izzy gets back, you got to talk to him because he's right over the hill from you, over the mountains. He knew that we were going to hit it off. And of course, we did. I count David amongst, my very best friends, if not my best friend now. So for those first couple of months, through January, February, into March, he sent me thousands of pages of research. And one of the things that I always wondered was how he managed to do so much copying on that poor copy machine that he used and abused at his job. I have boxes and boxes of hard files, hard copy files that Tom sent me over the years, including every Valley Courier article that had a mutilation story in it. And there were dozens and dozens of them. Rocky Mountain News, Denver Post, Pueblo Chieftain. He sent me reams and reams and reams of material and just overwhelmed me with all this stuff. And I read every single thing that he sent me. And I got probably the quickest education in this particular subject of the unexplained livestock death phenomenon. I got the quickest education probably in history. And then, of course, when David Perkins showed back up over at Libre, I spent hours and hours on the phone over the next couple of months with David. And then the big day arrived. It was the 25th anniversary of the Libre community. I kind of invited myself over and brought my band. And so this was my first chance to actually meet David and meet Tom and meet Gary. I think I stayed, David, about 4 or 5 days and went home, grabbed my brother, and we spent another week there, I think. I spent almost 2 weeks there.
Well, you know what's going to happen? Having admitted that, Chris, David's going to send the bill.
Right? I thought you'd never leave, man.
Now, vast question here about Tom Adams. Did he ever explain to either of you what attracted him to these strange fields of study?
Chris and I were talking about this a little while ago. We were trying to track that. And I came across the information that he refreshed my memory that he had first come to the San Luis Valley 1970. And ostensibly that was part of some sort of what I understood to be a school program. He and Gary Massey were both students at, I believe it's East Texas State University in Commerce, Texas. Right. And somehow as part of their coursework or Tom's coursework or some sort of scholastic endeavor at the time, he came to San Luis Valley, and the purpose was to study the effects and the aftermath of a so-called paranormal event on a small community, which is basically a piece of sociology. And Chris and I were talking about it. It's like, well, where did he come up with that idea? How did he even know about Snippy in 1970? I mean, something must have been simmering there, and I really don't know what it was. I think there was a lady named Ross Henderson who I believe was associated with that school, a little older. And I think she had, I knew her, she had an interest in the paranormal, and I think she and Tom gravitated to each other at that time. And then, Chris, you were talking about Lonnie Furbay?
Yeah, Furbay. He's the one that did one of the most extensive interviews with Nellie Lewis back just after the case broke and hit the papers in the fall of 75. And, I reprinted that entire interview in The Mysterious Valley and in portions of it in Stalking the Herd, if I remember correctly. And I think, because Lonnie, I think, went to the same school, East Texas State, as Tom, I think there may have been a connection there as well that may have exposed Tom early on to the Snippy case. And I remember him telling me that he had wanted to come to the Valley prior to 70, but this was the only, the first real opportunity that he had to actually make it out there. And, one thing we should stress here is when you talk Tom in the 70s or 80s, you got to mention Gary Massey. Gary was one of the most colorful, whenever I think of a Texan, Gary Massey springs to mind. Tom was more quiet. He had a soft accent. Gary had a very strong accent, was extremely flamboyant, big cowboy hat, cowboy boots. And, he had all those Texas, analogies, like it's like a cow pissing on a flat rock when he talks about a rainfall. He was just filled with these colorful axioms and witticisms. And these two were like a dynamic duo. Tom didn't drive. And we never really could figure out.
He didn't drive?
He didn't drive. I don't even think he ever had a license. He may have, but it was anybody who knew Tom knew about this. And so if Tom had to go anywhere and like do a road trip or something, of course, Gary had his van. What do you call the Beast or something?
You just call it Thang.
Oh, Thang, right?
Well, we'll continue with this Thang in just a moment. David Perkins joining us. We're talking about the late Tom Adams with Gene and Chris. You're in the Paracast.
We are the premier independent talk radio network, the Genesis Communications Network, GCN.
Attack of the Rockoids has been well received by critics and readers alike. It's a thrill-a-minute story you'll never forget. A former U.S. military intelligence officer is haunted by intense dreams about a beautiful woman pleading for his help after a terrible battle in outer space. But the dreams turn out to be true and thrust him into a telepathic love affair with a woman whose faraway planet is intent on destroying the Earth. And now the gripping tale continues in The Coming of the Protectors. It's the second book of the Rockoids trilogy, a galaxy-spanning adventure that pits our hapless heroes against powerful, fanatical enemies that threaten the lives of freedom-loving beings everywhere. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Classic science fiction at its best. Available now. For more details, visit rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com.
If the IRS has garnished your paycheck or seized money from your bank account, you need to get professional tax help now. Fast action is required to put a halt to these aggressive IRS collection tactics. You can count on the knowledgeable team of tax professionals at Wall & Associates. With over 30 years of experience, Wall & Associates has settled the tax problems of thousands of taxpayers for a small fraction of what they owed. For a free face-to-face consultation, call 1-800-425-4610 to put a wall between you and the IRS. 1-800-425-4610 or look for us on the web at wallandassociates.net. We solve tax problems. If you hire Wall & Associates today, you'll never have to talk to the IRS again. To stop the levies and seizures today, take action now. Call Wall & Associates at 1-800-425-4610. Wall & Associates. 1-800-425-4610. Based on actual cases, results may vary, not a solicitation for legal services.
Registered pharmacist Ben Fuchs ensures he gets the best use of his mineral supplements by using Longevity's Ultimate Enzymes.
If you start a nutritional supplement program and you find that you get loose stools more than you get any benefits from the supplements, there's a good chance that you're not absorbing the minerals. Now, here's the thing about minerals and mineral absorption. You need to have a functioning fat system. You need to have functioning bile. You need to have a well-functioning liver and a well-functioning gallbladder in order to get the benefits from nutritional supplements with minerals. It's very common that as we get older, we don't absorb fats, we don't utilize fats, and then you won't be utilizing or absorbing minerals either. I would be getting on the Ultimate Enzymes from Longevity. I'd be making sure I was taking it with all my meals.
To get optimal use of your nutritional supplements, order Ultimate Enzymes from Longevity by calling 866-735-2470. That's 866-735-2470 or on the web at brightsidebed.com. That's brightsidebed.com. Order today.
We all know that Berkey Water Purification Systems are the most trusted name in water filtration. As an authorized Berkey dealer for over 6 years and serving thousands of satisfied customers, the Berkey Guy offers amazing specials for Berkey water filtration systems. The Berkey Light systems include a set of self-sterilizing and recleanable black purification elements that purify water by removing chlorine, pathogenic bacteria, cysts, and parasites to non-detectable levels and remove harmful chemicals such as herbicides and pesticides. Order the Berkey Light system today, complete with 2 black Berkey elements for only $231, and the Berkey Guy will ship your order free of charge. With the purchase of a Berkey Light, the Berkey Guy is also offering a set of fluoride and arsenic filters for only $39.99. That's over 30% off the retail price. Call the Berkey Guy at 1-877-886-3653. That's 1-877-886-3653. Or order online at goberkey.com. That's goberkey.com today.
Hi, this is James Fox from Chasing UFOs. You're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
Yeah, I wonder about somebody who is specializing in paranormal research and doesn't drive. And I can see their reasons for that, you know. Not everybody has the temperament to drive, or maybe he had an accident early on, didn't want to pursue it. There was maybe all sorts of reasons we don't know. Tom Adams with Gene and Chris and David Perkins. I wanted to kind of ask you an interesting question here. Now, we know that a lot of people in the UFO field who get deep and dirty into investigations at one time or another, getting into cattle mutilations and such, encounter Tom Adams. I did, not that often, but I did. And other people I knew encountered him. But when you look up Tom Adams online, the closest you come is a British actor who died last year named Tom Adams. Isn't that curious? There's not much about him to be found.
That's true. That's true. And just to go back to the driving thing, I covered that in the little obituary, I guess you'd call it, that you ran on the Paracast board there about Tom's. This I got from Gary. Apparently, when Tom was a teenager, he took a driving course and was driving around with an instructor, and something happened. We don't know what it was. Some sort of incident that was terribly humiliating to Tom. And he came back after that and told Gary, I will never drive a car again as long as I live. And he didn't. I mean, talk about idiosyncrasies. Sometimes, you know, people have those things. They just get hung up on it, and something was really, really humiliated him.
You know, I understand the impact, though, and I'll give you a reason for this. I was maybe 10, 12 years old. I was learning how to swim at a summer camp in upstate New York. And at that point, I was a little bit overweight. Right now, I weigh about 5 pounds less than I did when I was 18. I have a normal weight. But I was overweight as a 12-year-old kid. Fat Jewish boy from Brooklyn, New York. And I tried to learn how to swim, and something happened. I jumped into the water and my back hurt, and somebody had to rescue me. I never swam again.
Sometimes you got to do a lot of swimming on this show there, Gene. But
well, that's because I have people like you that cause that to happen. I'm kidding. But, you know, we've been swimming here fine. We keep our heads above water kind of barely, sort of. But I understand that some kind of trauma can happen where you don't feel like driving ever again.
Yeah, and Gary loved to drive. He was your classic cowboy pickup truck driving fool. I guess that's okay to say. Usually had a cold beer between his legs at all times, as they do in Texas.
A cold Lone Star.
Lone Star. But that was Gary's role. He was the man that drove the truck through thick and thin, and Tom sat in the passenger side with all his maps, you know, and charting out everything and trying to figure out where to go, what to do. He was, you know, the logistics guy. But they had different characteristics and traits, but they really seemed to match up well. They complemented each other very well in what they were doing. And they could be, you know, good cop, bad cop, or they could do, you know, play just about any role that you wanted them to play, whatever the situation demanded. So it was a good partnership.
Definitely. And one thing that I think we should stress pretty early on here is the incredible intellect that Tom had, and a truly verging on, exceptional photographic memory. He could pull names, dates, times, descriptions, just out of thin air, just magically. Always stunned me at how effortless his recall, his ability to recall facts and figures and names and stuff was really, that fact alone, I think, was one of the most impressive things about the man. He really had a file cabinet for a mind, and was able to pull files out at will just by, instant recall. And David, I'm sure you'd like to comment about that too.
Well, yes, indeed. It was phenomenal. I always used to tease him that he had a mind like a steel, whatchamacallit. But he was, I've never seen anything like it really in my whole life. Anybody, people talk about photographic memories, and I always think, whatever. But it was some kind of special talent or gift. I don't quite know where to put it. Somebody that could do that could just pull those dates, times, places, faces, names, anything you want. It was at his fingertips at all times.
You and I are pretty good, David, but compared to Tom.
Wow, really, it was phenomenal. And he was always like that all the time I knew him. Never faded. He was a hard person to play Trivial Pursuit with. He could remember every sitcom character or anything that he'd ever run across in his whole life, and he was just voracious in his reading and acquisition of information. He was just almost scary.
Yeah, he probably would have been banned from Money Trivial Pursuit. Right. The only time I ever lost a Trivial Pursuit was when you and I were partners against him and Gary, and he answered all the questions.
Right,
just by one.
Yeah, it was really something. Don't quite know how he did that, where he got it, but he was so curious, and I think you're kind of touching on that, about everything. And it's a wonderful quality in an investigator. You've got to be curious. You got to wonder about everything. And we've talked about this, Chris. In this realm, I can think of virtually nothing that doesn't potentially relate to the subject. If you're talking about, Greek mythology or, the latest advances in biology or, any of the hard sciences, the soft sciences, the classics, the, pop culture, all of it. There's just
environment.
Yeah. Everything potentially relates. So you really have to have an incredibly broad scope of knowledge and be curious about virtually everything. It really is a helpful trait, and he definitely had that.
Is there a reason why we don't have a body of written work from Tom Adams?
Well, that is a good question. I was thinking about that this morning. I've got, like I say, everything that he has ever published. I've got it here, but he was a pamphleteer, basically, and he contributed to hardbacks and this and that, and he did a certain amount of TV, radio, lectures, but he was just never felt compelled to get it all together under a hardcover. I think he was in such fluid a state of flux all the time because the information was just coming in so rapidly, and he was doing the best he could to get it turned around into some format, like his publications, his broadsides, the stigmata, and it was just in and out as fast as he could go. Wow. And that, as a matter of fact, when we lost our communication, we were working on a book together, which was going to be compiled, everything that he had published and I had published, compiled into one unit with new material and photos and so on. And that was our book publishing project. It was called Mute Testimony. And that's where our paths parted.
Well, was there a falling out? How come you lost touch with him?
No, there was no falling out. We were, again, in the piece that you have on Paracast, I talk about that we were cruising right along. And I was, on my end, in charge of basically getting everything scanned into a format, a digital format that we could work with, and dealing with photos and photo editing. And I was starting to run up expenses. And I said, Tom, there are going to be some upfront expenses here. I mean, we weren't sure whether this was going to be a self-published piece of work or whether we could get it into a, mainstream publisher or what. But I believe we both thought it was going to be self-published and self-promoted. But when I started running up the expenses and saying, well, look, I understand you're in poor position right now financially to deal with this, but I'll pay for this upfront stuff, and then I'll take, get paid back out of our first, hopefully, profits of the venture. And I think Tom found that a little humiliating, that he wasn't pulling his weight. And then I put in the piece on Paracast about that last letter that I got from him, that he was, in dire straits financially, and he was going to have to withdraw from the field. And he said, I missed the world, but I suppose it'll still be there when I get back. And, meanwhile, giving me permission to carry on and just do the book on my own, and, abdicating all his rights in the project and saying good luck. So
now, when was this? What year?
That would have been, help me, Chris. What was that?
I think about 2002, maybe late 2001.
Okay, you're right. It was 2002.
Okay, we'll have more to talk about Tom Adams, his work, and we'll explore more of what he did, since there is no big published record of it. David Perkins joining Gene and Chris. You're in the Paracast.
Free from the shackles of corporate America, we're the place for independent thinkers. GCN.
By now, you heard about Bitcoins, but did you know that over 65,000 businesses accept Bitcoins? Listen, if you're already earning Bitcoins or trying to make money in the Bitcoin market, you've got to know bidbit.co, because at bidbit.co, you can receive Bitcoin by selling your personal items or business products. You heard right. Whether personal or business, you can now buy, sell, and auction your products quickly, easily, and securely at bidbit.co. That's bidbit.co. Bidbit.co.
We the people grow cotton, weave fabric, engrave ink, embed strips and fibers to protect from counterfeit and carting to a private bank, having it lent back at interest, forcing taxes to service debt. This capitalism, or was Jefferson correct when stating a central bank issuing the public currency is a greater menace to the liberties of the people than a standing army? Hi, Ted Anderson. I'm placing a free silver dollar in a book that explains our monetary system. Call for your copy, 800-686-2237. It's time to understand the system. Call 800-686-2237. That's 800-686-2237.
Hi, my name is Scott Fuchs, teacher and rowing coach for over 14 years. I was sluggish, overweight, on prescription drugs, and only 30-something. Fortunately, I was referred to Dr. Z, and happy to say Dr. Z's all-natural protocols over a consistent course resolved my health issues. I'm in the best shape of my life, and most importantly, on 0 medications.
I'm Dr. Stanowski, author of Evology, trained as a primary care physician, surgical manipulation under anesthesia, expert in nutrition, diet, weight loss, immune system, and I specialize in chiropractic. My 15 years of professional experience has taught me the 4 keys to vibrant health: a balanced musculoskeletal system, an integrated nervous system, a flowing lymphatic system, and a body filled with over 90 essential nutrients. This has been a secret too long. Actualize your potential, reverse disease. Call me, Dr. Z. 201-945-1177, 201-945-1177, evolyourself.com.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
We honor the memory of Tom Adams, one of the key contact points in UFO research, especially cattle mutilations, with Gene and Chris and David Perkins. Remember our second radio show after the Paracast. To learn more, you go to plus.theparacast.com, plus.theparacast.com. That's where you sign up for Paracast Plus. You get After the Paracast, the enhanced version of this show, and video stuff to come. We also give away a free copy of Chris O'Brien's Stalking the Tricksters if you subscribe for 1 year or 5 years. Plus.theparacast.com. So, David Perkins, when we left you in our previous segment, you mentioned the fact that you and Tom Adams, as of about 2002, 2003, were preparing this book, and he had to kind of withdraw because of his personal issues. Now, is that it in terms of contact, or were you in touch with him regularly after that?
No, there was no further contact. Oh, it was very disconcerting.
Yeah, boy, that's an understatement.
To Chris and to me, to Linda Howe, to Nancy Talbot, all these people that were close friends of his, and they were doing the same thing I was doing. It's like, hey, it's okay. Call me back, write a letter back. And it was just dead radio silence, And so we all would consult with each other. It's like, what's going on? What's going on? And we could never figure it out, but we eventually, all of us came to the same conclusion, I guess, which was it's obvious that he doesn't want to be contacted, and let's respect that. And let's hope that whatever this is that he's going through will, subside and be resolved, and he'll come firing back on all cylinders, but he never did.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've speculated as well as to the possible causes of him completely pulling back and away from the field. And I remember distinctly the last time I saw Tom and Gary, actually, was in December 1999 at David's house in Santa Fe. And I remember, Tom was kind of withdrawn and quiet, and he seemed pretty frazzled. He seemed burnt out. I'm not sure what he was going through at the time, but he seemed a little bit quieter than normal, preoccupied. Of course, I had made a bet that first night that I had met Tom, Gary, and David up at Libre at the party there. I had bet Gary a case of beer that someone would be charged with the crime of cattle mutilation before the end of the decade. And that was, 7 years. I figured in 7 years, we're going to be able to get at least one person charged. And so we bet a case of beer of the others choosing, the winners choosing. And I remember thinking it was about a week before New Year's 2000, and I had a chance to meet Tom and Gary down at David. So, man, it took some doing. I'll tell you, it's really tough in Colorado to find Lone Star beer. There's just something about Coloradans and Texans. It's like oil and water. And I'll tell you, it was rough. I paid a lot of money for that case, but I brought that case down and I paid off that bet. And that was the last time I ever saw him. I think I may have talked to him once, maybe twice after that, but I'm still scratching my head. We really don't know what happened. There are some indications possibly that he just kind of lost it and got really paranoid possibly. And then there's the very strong likelihood that he became a born-again Christian, which we don't know this for sure, but there are some indications that possibly is what happened. But I don't know, David, what do you think? Did you notice anything about him?
Yeah, I think, as I said in my little article there, it was the perfect storm of factors. But it just came so suddenly, which is, it's one thing when you burn out, it kind of takes a while. You don't burn out overnight. But it just was black and white. Boom, gone. And it was, I don't know, the paranoia could have entered into it. The financial thing was just a huge, huge factor. He just felt so crippled that he couldn't go to the conferences and had to depend on his friends for this and that. And then, he'd been through a relationship, a marriage with Krista Tilton, which left him a little beat up, I guess you could say. He was emotionally fragile in some ways, I think. I just have to characterize it that way. That he wasn't, completely worldly in the realm of human relationships, and especially romantic relationships. As far as I know, Krista was his first ever romantic relationship.
Yeah. Tom and romance just don't seem to
it's
be in the same ballpark.
But Yes, I mean, he was so absorbed in his work, and he just wasn't particularly interested in romantic type of stuff. And he had his close friends, and he valued them just like we all do. But that was a whole new game for him. He was out of his comfort zone, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So I think all of those factors kind of just brought him to that point where I think maybe he stopped and just said, okay, I'm going to stop for now and try to regroup myself. And then the more time went by, he found that he couldn't re-enter the field. And I just got this feeling that he just didn't want to go, for instance, to a conference and have everybody say, gee, what's been happening, Tom? What's up with Krista? What's up with this? What's up with that? And he didn't want to have to answer all those personal questions. It really made him uncomfortable.
Yeah, he was very private.
How did you put together his final years then? Or did you? Just you learned that he died and that was it?
Well, yeah, we've just been kind of piecing it together. He went to work at the Dollar General store, which I think he found humiliating. And he just seemed to be a complete workaday guy. One detail that came to us from his relatives there in Paris, Texas, and they said, well, after he died, they went to his apartment, and his desk was covered with letters from people like me and Chris, for instance, and investigators that were just unopened. He never even bothered to open them and see what was in them. And I thought, wow. So he just didn't want any part of it after a certain point, whether it just he found it all humiliating, or he didn't want to answer those questions, or he'd come to a dead end, or he realized that he couldn't afford to pursue this quixotic journey. But I mean, as Chris and I know, this is, the payoffs here are not going to be great. The likelihood of success is actually fairly low. And so you have to have some pretty elaborate justifications to keep on going. And it's not money, and it's not fame, and it's, to me, it's personal curiosity is all it's eventually boiled down to. I'm not even all that concerned about conveying it to the world,
Right.
I just really would like to know personally. Somebody said, well, we'll tell you the answer, but you could never tell anybody. It's like, okay, I'll take that.
It's not the the best cocktail party subject
Right.
to dive into. There's very few people that you can really share this information with without them looking at you kind of strangely. And this leads us to a question that we have on our forum from one of our top posters, Burnt State, from Canada. And first of all, he acknowledges the tribute, David. He says that was a very heavy tribute, and it's permeated with a lot of sadness. I have always found the cattle mystery to be a very disturbing thing. There's such a brutality to it all. What motivated Tom and all of you to persist in such dark spaces? I imagine a strong sense of Fortean inspiration and humor must have been essential ingredients. Boy, that's an understatement.
Yeah.
Let me remind you, in case you haven't heard, we actually have a second radio show related to the Paracast called After the Paracast, and it's about color commentary, special additional interviews, and more. And the only way you can get a copy is to subscribe to the Paracast Plus at plus.theparacast.com. That's plus.theparacast.com. A modest subscription fee. You also get a higher quality copy of the Paracast with 41 minutes of network ads removed. It's only $5 a month, $50 a year, $175 for 5 years. Plus.theparacast.com. Don't forget, if you subscribe to the Paracast Plus for a year or more, you get a free copy of Stalking the Tricksters and Chris O'Brien. Plus.theparacast.com. Let's do our break here, and we'll have David Perkins answer. With Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast.
First came Attack of the Rockoids, and it was a critically acclaimed success. And now there is The Coming of the Protectors. A former military intelligence man is contacted by a space woman in a dream that turns out to be a nightmare because evil forces on her distant planet are planning to conquer the Earth. This is gripping science fiction of the classic kind. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Find out more at rockoids.com. That's Rockoids, ROCKOIDS.com.
Do you need a website? Well, you can get a great deal on hosting services with Namecheap's legendary coupon code. They're offering substantial hosting discounts on shared hosting, business hosting, VPS hosting, reseller hosting, and even dedicated servers. Namecheap is preferred by millions. It's backed by a money-back guarantee. Use the coupon code LEGENDARY to cash in on the special deal at Namecheap.com, Namecheap.com.
Hi, John Hubner from Midas Resources. Are you tired of watching your hard-earned assets dwindle away? As government spending is out of hand and the Federal Reserve is creating in excess of $20 billion a week, are you tired of stockbrokers gambling away your hard-earned money? Is this market a setup for a crash greater than 1987? Too many of today's policies resemble those that led to the collapse of 1929. This is John Hubner, and that was me in 2007. And we all know what happened when the subprime credit bubble burst. By March 2009, the dollar lost 50% of its value. The entire U.S. banking system was on the verge of collapsing. Like all financial problems of the past, is history about to repeat itself? Call me, John Hubner, at 1-800-686-2237, extension 129, before it's too late to protect yourself. Will the oncoming catastrophe take all private IRAs, 401ks with it? There is a way to protect your hard-earned assets. Call me, John Hubner, at 1-800-686-2237, extension 129.
If you constantly feel run down and tired, your pH level might be low and your body could be full of toxins. If what you drink is not at a pH level of 8 or higher, you are inviting bacteria and acid to thrive in your body. But there is something you can do. Simply add 10 drops of AlkaVision Plasma pH drops to your water to help your body rid itself of acidic waste, increase oxygen, and raise your pH balance to optimum levels. AlkaVision Plasma pH drops combine a unique formula of the most alkaline minerals in the world, alkalizing the water you drink, ridding your body of acidic waste and toxins, and helping you regain energy and vibrant health. And studies show viruses, bacteria, and toxins cannot survive in an alkaline, high pH environment. Order your bottle of AlkaVision Plasma pH drops at alkavision.com. That's ALKA vision.com. Or call 269-409-1776. 269-409-1776. Alkalize your body. Supercharge your health at alkavision.com today.
We live in a complicated society. Stressful issues are always popping up. Have you ever been treated unfairly by someone? Have you ever been overcharged for a repair? Have you ever signed a contract or a document? Worried about identity theft? How many times have you been in those unique situations where you just wanted to call an attorney to find out if you're right or wrong, or what your legal rights are? But every time you think about calling an attorney, what do you think about first? That's right. Who do you call, and how much will it cost? Our friends at Legal Shield have found a solution. With a nationwide network of 6,900 attorneys who average over 19 years of experience, Legal Shield's law firms take over 40,000 calls per week helping their members. For less than $20 per month, you can have access to Legal Shield on everything from the trivial to the traumatic. Let Legal Shield stand up for your rights at lsprotection.com. That's lsprotection.com. Or call 855-340-SAVE, 855-340-7283.
Results will vary from case to case.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
So we are honoring the work of the late Tom Adams, who kind of exited from the paranormal field, 12, 13 years ago, but did a lot of work and interacted with many people. We had a question on the table from Burnt State, who, of course, is one of our very frequent and prolific forum posters and an occasional presence on the show. David Perkins, you had a response?
Well, in terms of what keeps us going in that dark space, it's my own personal attitude that whatever is behind the mutilations is very significant. And that includes everything from misperceived predator kills that creates a meme, that creates a belief system, all the way to it's aliens doing it. I mean, there's a huge spectrum there, obviously. But whatever it is, it's important that we understand what it is. I think it's important to our future. And this is something that's really unshakable in my mind, that it is not insignificant.
Was there much of a family there? You said he had a relationship that didn't work out, but he never married?
Well, they did marry. I actually got to poking around recently, and because I was never entirely sure that they had technically married. They, presented themselves as a married couple, but sure enough, they did get married and they did get divorced. So that much we know for sure. I have those records. But he didn't have any siblings. His mother was an invalid. She lived to be at least 100 years old, his mother, and the last 30 years of her life were in a pretty invalid state. That weighed on him also. That was another one of those perfect storm factors that must have had some effect. But he really didn't have in terms of a nuclear family, much going on there.
I think you should mention, too, that because of his inability or absolute, just refusal to drive, his mother literally had to drive him to work every day, and he would arrive early so that nobody saw that his mom was driving him to work, which I always thought was kind of strange.
Yes. That's the idiosyncrasies that I'm talking about, but which we will probably never be able to plumb those depths, What we know is what he produced and what he gave us and what he meant to us and the role that he played in ufology, mutology, if you want to call it that. This was his family, basically.
Let's begin to talk here, folks, more about the cases he worked on with you guys, because that's where he'll be remembered more so than his personality and the quirks and all that stuff. So, long and short of it, and I'll ask you, David Perkins, this question. What do you think is the most significant case he was involved in?
In terms of mutilations, he was involved in a lot of cases. He branched out into all kinds of stuff. Into abduction research, cryptozoology, ufology, obviously, huge. But I was just thinking the piece that I covered in my little obituary there, which I was just looking it up, and that was April 23rd, 1978, Dulce, New Mexico, today is the anniversary of that event. But the first time I went out with him and Gary and to look at a mutilated cow. That was very interesting. We hooked up with State Policeman Gabe Valdez, and my wife Carrie was there. As a matter of fact, the synchronicities of it were very peculiar because we were all up at Burl Lewis's cabin at the time, just having another one of our little get-togethers. And we were all just ready to leave and go our different ways, and phone rings at Burl's. It's Gabe Valdez. You know where those guys are? If they're around, I got to come and see this. We were just minutes from leaving, and it would have been impossible to pull back together. So I thought, wow, this is kind of interesting. It's almost like it's being done for us, So we all piled in Thang and drove down to Dulce and went out and looked at this animal. And it was just a phenomenal thing to see. And we all explored it together and discussed it with Gabe. And it was one of those cases where something unusual had happened. Whatever it was very unusual. And Gabe was all excited about what he called the clamp marks on the back hind legs of this animal. The animal looked like it had been dropped from 1,000 feet or something. It was just crumpled. Its back was broken. Its legs were broken. Its horn was driven back into the side of its head. And boy, something of terrific force had interacted with that animal.
Man, it must have been a pissed off coyote, boy.
Yeah, really, man. And then Gabe took us over to the road. It was one of those hard-packed adobe New Mexico roads, and there were these 3 pod marks, he called them, indented deep into that really hard soil, like something very heavy had set down there. And so it had all of those characteristics going for it. And I remember thinking, wow, this is definitely not a predator. Whatever it is, I don't know. But it would be hard to come up with any kind of rational, logical explanation for what had happened to that animal. So, that whole scene is just burned into my brain. I'll never forget that day. And And we really bonded, all of us, that day, I think, and we realized, boy, we're dealing with something that's very strange.
Then it should be the 40th anniversary of that trip.
Yeah, geez. Yeah, well, so we didn't. Tom and I didn't actually go out together, and Gary, and look at that many what we call fresh mutes. I mean, it's just, we live so far apart, and so much of what Tom did was basically calling sheriffs and getting the photographs and getting the vets reports and rooting all that stuff out and putting it together and publishing it and moving on. So,
It was a shame that Tom never became computer savvy, because he, before the internet, was, beyond amazing in terms of a networker. He put everybody in touch with everybody else. He had a huge network of law enforcement and ranchers that he would constantly be keeping them up to speed on what else was going on. He was kind of the clearinghouse. He was the central sort of hub for people, especially law enforcement and the ranching community, to dovetail their efforts. And a lot of this went through Tom. It was very fascinating going through all those Stigmata magazines and seeing how many people were in touch with him, and how important he was in keeping the law enforcement community up to speed on other cases, and keeping the ranching community up to speed, and telling them who to go to, who to talk to. And I felt that was probably one of the most amazing jobs of networking that I've seen before or after the internet. I mean, the guy really was dazzling with his ability to put people in touch with one another and to keep everybody informed.
We will keep you informed more about the work of Tom Adams in our next segment with David Perkins. And with Gene and with Chris, you're in
the Paracast.
A little right, a little left, but always independent-minded. The Genesis Communications Network, GCN.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter, and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code Night Owl. Use the coupon code Night Owl to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's LEMKEsoft.com. Lemkesoft.com. LEMKEsoft.com.
Did you know that drinking pure, high alkaline water is one of the most important factors in maintaining high energy and vibrant health? Most experts agree that the water you drink should be at a pH level of 8 or higher. AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops, available only at alkavision.com, combine a unique formula of only the most alkaline minerals. AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops alkalize your water, ridding the body of harmful toxins, and helps you regain health and energy. Alkalizing your water by simply adding 10 drops of AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops helps the body rid itself of acidic waste, increases oxygen content, and raises the pH of your body to healthy levels. And bacteria and viruses cannot survive in an alkaline high pH environment. Order your bottle of AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops for only $29.95 at alkavision.com. That's ALKAvision.com. Or call 269-409-1776. 269-409-1776. Alkalize your body. Supercharge your health at alkavision.com today.
By now, you may have heard a bit about Bitcoins. But did you know Bitcoins are now over an $8.5 billion market? And did you know that over 65,000 businesses now accept Bitcoins? Listen, if you're already earning Bitcoins or trying to make money in the Bitcoin market, you've got to know bidbit.co. Why? Because bidbit.co is where you can easily receive Bitcoins by selling and auctioning off your own personal items or promote business products and services for Bitcoins. You heard right. Whether personal or business, you can now buy, sell, and auction your product and services quickly, easily, and securely for Bitcoin at bidbit.co, the first and only marketplace website to offer BidBit Escrow, a proprietary technology which gives buyers and sellers security and peace of mind because all transactions are protected. Start today. It's free to join, free to post, free to auction, and free to bid at bidbit.co. Buy, sell, bid, or auction everything Bitcoin. That's www.bidbit.co. Bidbit.co.
Don't complain about your cable bill going up and up and up. Do something about it. Grab a pencil and jot down this special number, 1-855-905-MY-TV. The more cable TV rates go up, the better digital satellite TV looks. Say goodbye to the cable guy and get more of your favorite channels in 100% digital quality for less money. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. Sign up for packages starting as low as $19.99, and there's no equipment to buy. You get free HD TV upgrade, a free DVR upgrade, and free professional installation. You control what you watch when you watch it. Record your favorite shows, pause and rewind live TV, even skip the commercials. Watch local channels too. At just $19.99, what are you waiting for? Pull out your major credit or debit card. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV. Say goodbye to the cable guy. Cut costs and get more. 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV.
Hey, this is Marie D. Jones, the author of This Book is from the Future, and you are listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
We continue with our retrospective of Tom Adams, who passed away last year, but had worked in the UFO and paranormal fields for several decades. And the people who knew him, at least two of those people are with us, of course, our own Chris O'Brien and David Perkins. And the thing that Chris was talking about here was the remarkable ability of Tom Adams to network with people. You know, his biggest function, kind of the go-to person. You wanted to know something about amazing, strange, or frightening events, you go to Tom and he'd hook you up with other people. And he did this without being a digital expert, putting it all on computer. What do you do? Just write things down?
Yeah. He was a consummate note taker. He did produce a publication called Stigmata, which was usually a bi-monthly publication that was a roundup of all the prior month's cases and the state of, where older cases, where their investigations, he would give updates on older cases and what we were finding out from pathology reports, from law enforcement going out and digging up other cases. It was like a giant jigsaw puzzle, really, that was all ongoing. And the Stigmata was an absolute invaluable reference for me, putting together my timeline along with David's help in Stalking the Herd. The whole section on the 70s and 80s relies heavily on Tom's work. And I do stand on the shoulders of giants, as I've always said. I could not have done this without David's help and without Tom's help. And early on, Linda was very instrumental in my process as well. She really trained me over the phone how to properly interview people, gave me all sorts of really sage advice on particular interviewing techniques and the manner, sort of the bedside manner that one should develop. And I think I've taken all that information to heart, and I think I've turned into a pretty darn good interviewer for people that have undergone, sometimes life-changing experiences and often frightening experiences. One thing that I must underscore here, and it refers back to Bernd State's question about the darkness that permeates this particular subject. This is not for everybody by any stretch, and anybody who does get involved in this at one point or another is going to start to get paranoid. I think Tom's paranoia, echoed my own back in late 98 and early 99 when I had some run-ins with some, strange characters. And, as soon as you start digging into government secrets, then that's when you should start getting paranoid.
Chris, I want to break in here because you mentioned run-ins with strange characters.
Yeah.
Okay, let's tell the tale here.
Well, I've mentioned it on the Paracast on a number of occasions where I wasn't supposed to be home. I was supposed to be on the way to Denver bringing my girlfriend Isadora's daughter to her dad's. Isadora was away at a conference in Grand Junction. Somebody sawed my clutch pedal pad off, or it didn't look broken off. It looked like it had been sawed with a hacksaw. And I couldn't drive all the way to Denver with an arm of a clutch coming out of the floor with no pad on it. It would have, gone right through my work boots, let alone sneakers. So I ended up having to leave my Jeep parked away from the house and got a ride to the house. There were no cars in the driveway. And that night, about 3 a.m, 4 guys waltzed into the house, talking full voice, right on the other side of the bedroom door. I heard them going through my file cabinets, taking pictures off the wall. One of them went upstairs and checked the upstairs out. And Brisa normally would sleep in the bottom of the 2 bunk beds, but that night she was in the top bunk, and she hid under the covers and kind of peeked out, and she could see something silhouetted that appeared to be on the guy's face, like night vision goggles or something. And so she just lay very still. And at one point, it just got so freaky. After about 10 minutes, maybe it seemed longer, but I think it was only about 10 minutes. I kind of put on a fake sleepy voice and said, "Oh, honey, is that you?" Complete silence, and wham, they just zipped out of the house. And I remember Tom was a little bit nervous about that. And, at the time I'd been looking into the underground base scenario as it may exist along the border with Colorado, New Mexico. A very good source who claimed he and a group that he was belonged to had found the entrance to one of these facilities. I was getting ready to meet the guy, and I got visited by the man in beige. I've told that story a number of times on the Paracast. Director from the Institute of Social Architecture. I still have his card. K Street in D.C. When people like this start turning up, that I think was a red flag in Tom's mind. And I remember that he began to seem a little bit more conspiratorial, a little bit more, with a little paranoia, I think, tinged concern. He thought his phone was being monitored. There was some talk about possibly mail being intercepted. So I think that may have been about the beginning of the downslide into 99, 2000. I did notice a definite change around the end of 98, the beginning of 99.
Did you feel then that maybe he was being harassed by one or more of these people?
Oh, that's a tough one. Even if he had, I doubt he would have said anything, but possibly. Well, what do you think, David? Over all the years that you knew him, did Tom ever indicate that he felt that he was under any sort of, overt surveillance, let's say, or did he ever kind of dive into the realm of paranoia with you?
Well, it's a hard one. Like you say, he didn't want to give that too much play. I think it was a general assumption on our parts at that time that our phones were monitored. We just sort of went on that assumption. I'm not quite sure why, but it just, like you're describing the feeling of that period. And, you're talking about, files and this and that. And I had some of my files just disappeared, at the house in Colorado, which I thought, well, obviously I misplaced them, but I didn't. And I know I didn't. They're gone. And, there are no characters involved. But there again, you could say, well, you misplaced them. You just think that. But, there was a certain pattern to that. And there was a certain, I don't know, there was a paranoia. I think I told you the story. I don't think I've ever told it about my mother. And it was right at the time when I was filing just massive Freedom of Information Act requests and just poking after everything, military bases. I was really interested in the 1975 overflights of UFOs over the northern tier of, nuclear bases, basically, all the way from Malmstrom to, Loring in Maine. Anyway, I was really going after it with trying to get government documents. Around this time, my mother called up and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm working on this." And she said, "Well, these 2 guys came to my house." She lived in Florida. She was a widow. And they identified themselves as being from the Air Force Office of Special Investigation. And they said, "Do you know where your son is?" And she went, "Oh, no, haven't heard from him in a long time." I mean, you can imagine what she would be thinking. It's like, what is this? So they said, "Well, we would really like to find your son and talk to him." And she said, "Why?" And they said, I think it was something, I can't come up with the exact quote. It was something like, "He's tampering in affairs of national security." And she said, "What do you mean?" "Well, that's all we'll tell you." And they knew damn well where I was if this, if they wanted to talk to me. But it just seemed like, kind of an odd intimidation. You go to somebody.
Yeah, really kind of backhanded.
Let me ask you a question here quickly. Do you think, David, that these were really national security types or other people pretending to be what they claim to be?
Good question, Gene. Good question. But if they were these other people pretending, then, that starts us off on a whole other track. Why would they be doing that?
That seems to be part and parcel of what happens in these fields occasionally. David Perkins with Gene and Chris, you're in the Paracast.
Independently leading the way for the nation. Compelling talk for every political persuasion. We are GCN.
First came Attack of the Rockoids, and it was a critically acclaimed success. And now there is The Coming of the Protectors. A former military intelligence man is contacted by a space woman in a dream that turns out to be a nightmare because evil forces on her distant planet are planning to conquer the Earth. This is gripping science fiction of the classic kind. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Find out more at rockoids.com. That's Rockoids, ROCKOIDS.com.
So here's what happened. I was placing an order online. The site went down. It took hours before it returned, but I'd already placed the order with another company. If your site goes down, you could lose business. And if you have a business or personal site, you'll want to know it's easy to run and it will stay online. At iWeb, your site is hosted on one of the most reliable networks in the world. Talk to a sales rep at iWeb.com. Use the promo code TechNightOwl for a special discount.
Don't complain about your cable bill going up and up and up. Do something about it. Grab a pencil and jot down this special number, 1-855-905-MY-TV. The more cable TV rates go up, the better digital satellite TV looks. Say goodbye to the cable guy and get more of your favorite channels in 100% digital quality for less money. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. Sign up for packages starting as low as $19.99, and there's no equipment to buy. You get free HD TV upgrade, a free DVR upgrade, and free professional installation. You control what you watch when you watch it. Record your favorite shows, pause and rewind live TV, even skip the commercials. Watch local channels too. At just $19.99, what are you waiting for? Pull out your major credit or debit card. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV. Say goodbye to the cable guy. Cut costs and get more. 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV.
Attention taxpayers. If you've received a notice from the IRS or state, do not ignore it. It's also a big mistake to try and handle your tax problem on your own. If you owe back taxes, it's a fact that the government has the power to take everything you own, including your home, business, wages, savings, and your freedom. But here's the good news. There's a special toll-free tax hotline set up especially for you. This tax hotline will tell you about new programs that are geared to help you dramatically settle, reduce, or eliminate what you owe. But you have to call now. Take down this number or put it in your cell phone. But call 877-345-7645. That's 877-345-7645. When you call, you get free information on how you can reduce or eliminate back taxes, including penalties and interest. You can also be helped if you have unfiled returns, a tax lien, wage garnishment, bank levy, or if you've been entered into a payment plan but can't make the payments. Don't make the big mistake in thinking you can ignore or handle your tax problem on your own. You can stop the collection process immediately at 1-877-345-7645. That's 1-877-345-7645. 1-877-345-7645.
Stress, like many conditions in a fast-paced society, is at epidemic proportions, and one of the most effective ways to support your body during periods of excessive stress is by replacing the nutrients expended during that time. De-stress contains large amounts of B-complex vitamins, in addition to vitamin C, magnesium, and valerian root extract. For more information on this and other great products, contact Lady Talk Live at 855-333-5239. Majestic Earth's Beyond Tangy Tangerine contains no artificial sweeteners or preservatives and is glycemic friendly. This easy dissolving powder contains plant-derived minerals, vitamins, amino acids, and 115 fruits and vegetables. I can't think of anything better for you. For more information on this and other great products, contact Lady Talk Live at 855-333-5239. That's 855-333-LADY.
This is Jacques Vallée. You're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
We're looking into not just the life of Tom Adams, but the things that happen to the people who work with him, such as our own Chris O'Brien, and of course David Perkins. And I was asking David the fact that there were encounters with so-called government types. Were these really government types? Was the question I raised.
This is a good question, but there again, if they weren't, who were they and what was the agenda there? Sure, it was obviously to intimidate me in some way through my poor old widowed mother down there in Florida to back off. But, just to interject this, around that same time in Florida, there was a rash of clowns coming to people's doors, right? If you're a 40 and you're familiar with the evil clown scenarios.
Would you explain this to our listeners? Because we're hitting something here that doesn't get widely reported outside of our little circle.
Well, I'm not sure it's entirely significant, but if in Fortean lore, there's a fair body of work of so-called evil clowns that do strange things. I mean, was a rash of them. I can't remember where it was. I think it was California in the last year or something, these clowns. And apparently they explained it was some sort of performance art project by somebody or other. But if you go on the internet and Google evil clowns, you'll get a good dose of that. And there's some photos there that are very strange. But over the years, these insane clown posses or whatever have they show up. They do weird things. They're in line with a lot of Fortean type phenomena of creatures, odd people doing odd things. But this is just one genre of the clowns.
I was just looking at Wikipedia, evil clown. And they talk about the modern archetype of the evil clown has unclear origins. The stock character appeared infrequently during the 19th century in such works as Edgar Allan Poe's Hop Frog, which is believed by Jack Morgan of the University of Missouri-Rolla to draw upon an earlier incident at a masquerade ball in the 14th century. I mean, it just goes on and on.
Right.
It's like endless stream here.
Yeah. So, I mean, go back and read Mothman prophecies again, and you've just got these cast of characters that sort of blends into the Men in Black, which is a very strong genre in ufology. So were these guys Men in Black? And what is a Man in Black? What is that really? Is that a government agent or those aliens? A lot of the descriptions are like, they don't quite have their costumes together or something's really askew in their presentation and their appearance. So, this is a branch that takes off. It's a vector off of the subject that we're on here. But so you have to wonder, okay, I find it unlikely myself that any OSI guy is going to go down and bug my mother. When they knew if they wanted to talk to me, I was very easy to find. So,
but they didn't talk to you. They worked around you to intimidate the people you knew.
And that it was intimidating. It's like, oh, geez, okay, well, I've sucked my poor old mother into this now.
What's with that?
Really, what's up with that? But I think it's, like we're getting at here, this is more in line with MIB, Men in Black type activities. So that, you can't explain one unknown with another unknown. So it's just something that you Like Tom always says, well, we can't factor it in and we can't factor it out. He'd say that about everything. But he was fascinated with that kind of stuff, and so am I. It's like, well, this is something I just don't know where to put it. I really don't. But there have been a host of strange characters, strange occurrences. But if you are of a paranoid bent, you could find plenty of material here to just freak you out.
Push you to the edge.
But I personally don't see it that way, and I don't know why. Maybe it's just totally naive that there is really danger lurking here, but I don't feel it. I don't, something about this is too theatrical, and it's meant to have the effect that it has on us and on society. It does have some scary and dangerous aspects to it. But if you're going to get absorbed in that, you're in the wrong field. You should, from my point of view, I take it for what it's worth, which is not a hell of a lot, and move on, You
have to watch out for people who take advantage of this. But, the impression I got before is that for various reasons, Tom Adams, maybe later in his life, was intimidated by things like this. But you wonder why, after being in the field for so many years, being jaded, you have to be, by the things that went on. What would it take to intimidate anybody? You, Chris, me, Tom Adams?
Yeah, good question. Really good question. Well, I think it might be an opening here for something I want to talk about.
Sure.
Tom and Krista, his wife, and their marriage. And it was a turning point for Tom, and it's a time that we're talking about, the time of this marriage from 1987 to 91, when they were divorced.
Explain who Krista Tilton was for some of our new listeners.
Yeah, so Krista Tilton is in abductee world, is a pretty famous abductee, claims to have been abducted on several occasions. Tom hooked up with her. This all comes through Wendell Stevens, basically. And I know you're both familiar with Wendell Stevens. Long story short, I guess, I'm not quite sure how that connection was made where Tom and Krista first met. But if you, on the internet, you will see probably numerous references to the fact that Krista was married to Wendell Stevens and that she married him while he was in prison. And we all know what he was in prison for. But she claims she had married Wendell, and then after they divorced, then she married Tom. She married Wendell in prison. And she told me one time, she and Tom and Gary visited me in Colorado at my house there. And she told this story about on the way to get married to Wendell in prison, that she was driving down the road to the prison, and there was a mutilated cow by the side of the road. And she stopped and looked it over, and it's like, yep, sure enough, mutilated, then went on to meet with Wendell. So I was just looking at some material this morning. It kind of gave me a new insight about Tom and this intimidation factor, or the fact that he was getting in deep into government, perhaps involvement or something. But Krista and Wendell co-published a book in 1988, I think it was, called The Triad Experiment. It was called UFO Abductions of Women, The Triad Experiment. She used the name Krista Lee and co-author Wendell C. Stevens, 1988, in which she details, or Wendell basically does, her abduction life going back to the early 70s. But in there, Wendell says that he discusses this incident at the Tucson airport where something came over Krista and she went into a trance, and it was somehow then conveyed through her to Wendell that the supposed aliens were using her to impart the information they wanted imparted at this time to Wendell for purposes of the alien agenda, I guess. And I have a feeling that a similar thing happened with Tom, that he, from his point of view, he thought, this is my in into the real heart of this subject here. Here's a person that, has been on the alien examination tables. She's in contact with aliens mentally, telepathically. They're trying to convey something through her to me, that being Tom Adams.
Perfect girl to marry. Jesus.
And then, they're more rather unkind analysis of these, calling her a UFO groupie, moving from one well-known researcher to another well-known researcher, and having personal problems of I'm not sure what nature, but mostly related to her supposed abductions. She was apparently first abducted, she says, in 1972, and then shortly thereafter, she was found to be pregnant. And Wendell tells it, that she claims she had absolutely no sexual contact during any of that time that could possibly have explained how she became pregnant. She miscarried the baby, and then she was abducted at least 3 more times, in which apparently the aliens were trying to impregnate her again and were adjusting her hormones and trying to get her to be some sort of breeding stock. And she was in communication with this entity, her guide, Maijan, who was a Palladian.
It sounds more like some kind of game, but I don't want to get into that.
Well,
we've got David Perkins with Gene and Chris. You're in the Paracast.
The nation's largest independently owned and operated talk radio network, the Genesis Communications Network, GCN.
Hi, this is Larry Smith. Sometimes bad things happen to good people. When the cleaners ruined some special clothing, all they could do was show us a sign that said they weren't responsible. But when they got the letter from one of our Legal Shield attorneys, he promptly gave us a check for $1,152. Worry less and live more with lsprotection.com. That's lsprotection.com, or call 855-340-SAVE. That's 855-340-7283.
Results will vary from case to case.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. Have you ever wondered why banks, stockbrokers, investment advisors won't talk about gold IRAs? They've been available since 1986, yet the financial industry won't recognize the value of gold for your retirement. Gold has outperformed paper investments, yet no word about IRAs. If you would like to have gold for your retirement, call 800-686-2237. Don't get left behind by rising inflation and low returns. Call 800-686-2237. Secure your future and call 1-800-686-2237.
It's time to build your own emergency food stockpile with the industry leader, My Patriot Supply. Once you try them, you'll know why so many Americans like you have made them part of their emergency preparedness plan. Experience the My Patriot Supply difference today with this unbelievable offer. Right now, a 4-week food supply is only $99, and that includes free shipping. That's 50% off the online price. Call 800-274-3070 to claim yours. Limit 2 per caller while supplies last. This offer isn't available online, so you want to make sure and grab this opportunity to get prepared today. 800-274-3070 to get your 4-week food supply for the incredible price of only $99, and it'll be shipped to you completely free. Call 800-274-3070 right now. That's 800-274-3070 to claim yours while supplies last. Don't wait. Call today. Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
Well, it sounds like Chris is being abducted as we speak. I was looking up Krista Tilton as we talked. Is she still alive?
I believe so, according to what I can gather from. I haven't tried to make contact with her. My understanding is she's still alive, living in Tucson. But just to go a little further about how Tom got into the weeds pretty far here.
Well, this is the abduction weeds, which can get to be pretty strange.
Oh, yeah. So, but if, I'm trying to put myself in his mind, and plus you've got this romantic relationship brewing in the middle of everything else, which has been known to alter your one's perceptions about things. And there's a lot of emotional uplift and downdraft in those kind of situations. So, but Tom, I could see him thinking like, this woman is in contact with aliens. This is it, And then Krista had this whole tale about how she had a government minder I can't remember what his name was supposed to be. Wallace, I believe. John Wallace from Nellis Air Force Base. And he was in charge of like following her around to her lectures and supposedly had her mind controlled. Now, this is where it gets really murky, you know. So where Tom got in real trouble was Krista and Tom and this guy Wallace, apparently, came up with this plan to see how a rumor spread in the UFO community, which doesn't really sound like Tom's style at all, but he got sucked into it. And so they came up with this idea, this thing that's like after Krista left Wendell, that she, eloped or something with this guy, John Wallace, who took her under his wing, and she was to be the government star abductee as they filter this information out about the alien presence. And it was going to come through her and be, the government was going to direct how it was disseminated to the public, and Wallace was her minder. So they concocted this story, put it into the UFO research community treadmill, and to see where it would go and who would take what side, who would believe it, and who wouldn't believe it, and who would add on to it. There's some sort of sociological experiment or what. I don't see the logic of it myself. But it really backfired on them, and they got an enormous amount of grief. At least Tom and Krista did. I don't know this Wallace, but I don't know what his story was. But after that, some serious researchers I was just reading were saying, after this fiasco, I will never believe a word Tom Adams says again. This is ridiculous. Playing with people, toying with this kind of stuff. It never went back on her original claims that she was the chosen one, basically, John or whoever, to convey the alien agenda to the world, and the government was going to filter how that agenda came out of her and into the public consciousness. So,
and this is all post-communion, right? Post-Whitney Stieber?
Yep.
Yeah, I had a feeling it was.
It was. So you see how things started getting kind of murky and messy here. Tom had, was playing along with this. I don't think it was his idea, but he went with it, and I think that was another, once he and Krista had divorced and she'd gone her way, he maybe had time to ponder his involvement with all that and was profoundly embarrassed. So,
well, I noticed a real shift in tone in his publication Crux, which was at about this time folded into Stigmata. All of a sudden, they're talking about channeling this and a lot of new age kind of head-scratching stuff that was really very surprising to me. When I was over at your house researching, going through all those copies of Stigmata and Crux, when I got to the end of them, I noticed that you can really see the influence of Krista in there with a whole kind of new age sort of suspend your disbelief even sort of tone to it. And his work kind of fizzled out at that point.
True. Yeah, this is true. And so it's part of the ongoing Wendell Stevens saga. And by the way, even though it's generally acknowledged everywhere I read that Krista and Wendell were married, I can find no evidence of that whatsoever. And I've got really good ways of going after public records, the same way I got Tom and Krista's marriage and divorce records. And I can find absolutely no evidence that Wendell and Krista were ever married. None. So that could have been a total fabrication on her part. I don't know why.
Maybe she was some sort of agent provocateur, taking people out of their game and stuff. Maybe she was tasked to do this.
Well, now there's another interesting theory, isn't it? It sure muddied the waters in ufology, and from some people's points of view, I suppose, if you were in the government, there might be every reason to make ufology as murky as possible. I mean, from their point of view, you could think, okay, we've worked on this for 50 years, and we still have no idea what it is. It bugs us. The public expects answers. So let's just make the ufologists look like a bunch of fools, and we'll throw all this stuff in. I actually think this has happened. It would be to their advantage to make everybody in ufology look like freaking idiots and to thoroughly foul the waters for any kind of serious research. Because that way you can just say, well, it's a bunch of deluded idiots. We don't take it seriously, Just from a sociological government point of view, I could totally see the logic of doing that. And whether she was the perfect vehicle for that, maybe so.
Well, then how do you find the real stuff in these fields? There's so much of these shenanigans going on.
Well, that's where Chris is really good because, you read those books and he beat the pavement. He is a gumshoe. He went out there and said, I'm not going to take your word for it. I'm not even going to take the newspaper's word for it. I'm going to go talk to these people. I'm going to get the interview and I'm going to publish it. So he's separating the wheat from the chaff there. And I've tried to do the same. That, you just, once you get caught in this maelstrom of swirling craziness, it really kind of absorbs you. And if you have any predilection toward any of these theories, confirmation bias type stuff, then you'll go down that road, and you'll go down the next road and hit another dead end or enter another labyrinth. And it's just, almost purposely designed to confound.
Are you implying that's deliberate or just an accident of the kind of thing we're in?
I think part of that is deliberate. I do.
Yeah, and I think there's a part that's totally built into the scenario. But the subject matter kind of generates that sort of confounding.
It does, and that's where it's hard to separate those two. You're right, because the trickster, for instance, this is trickster tactics. If you're looking at the phenomenon as possibly as some sort of modern day version of trickster mythology, then the trickster's always doing pranks and always trying to mislead you and confound you and confuse you and turn the social order upside down. And that's the role of the trickster. So that, like you say, that's built into the phenomenon. And then you've got this other side, which is, people interested in societal control for the obvious reasons that they, want everything to be under control, law and order, national security, state, etc. It would be in their best interest to say, oh, there's nothing to see here. This is nonsense. It's a bunch of, National Enquirer crap. And, these are superstitious, deluded, ignorant people. So you got those two vectors basically moving in parallel.
Yeah, very easy to marginalize somebody in this field if you want.
Exactly. That's the word.
We've got a lot to talk about here about the work of Tom Adams and the strange things he encountered, which obviously impacted our cast and crew here. We also should tell you about the impact of our other radio show after the Paracast. You can learn more about it just by going to plus.theparacast.com. That's plus.theparacast.com. And you can sign up right there for $5 a month, $50 a year, $175 for 5 years. You get After the Paracast, the enhanced version of the Paracast to download, and a free copy of Chris O'Brien's Stalking the Tricksters, which is influencing some of our conversation here today. And that's for people who subscribe to 1 year or more, plus.theparacast.com. David Perkins joins Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
Neighbors, are you tired of dealing with a slow web hosting provider? Well, check out A2 Hosting and their screaming fast Swift server platform. They even have SSDs that load pages 300% faster than the competition. Ready to give your site a speed boost? Well, tell you what, neighbors, head on over to a2hosting.com. That's A2, that's number 2, a2hosting.com. Check out their Prime hosting account. And get this, neighbors, they're even giving you an exclusive 25% off discount for all our listeners. 25%. And remember, their Guru Crew support team is standing by 24/7, 365 days a year to answer any of your questions. Now, to get the discount, use the coupon code GENE when you check out.
Gold isn't for you? Ted Anderson, president of Midas Resources, one of the world's premier gold and precious metal investing firms. I get it. You wouldn't buy gold if you believed that the government is doing a great job, that the Fed will stop handing out trillions of dollars like bailout candy, that Social Security would be there for you. That's not what's happening. You might even pass on gold if the stimulus package wouldn't fuel inflation, or that the dollar wouldn't lose value, or that your retirement would be secure. If all looks rosy to you, then now is not the time to buy gold. For the realist, there have never been more sobering reasons to diversify with gold. Since 2001, the U.S. dollar index has tanked 30% while gold has risen 300%. Right now, savvy investors are adding gold to their portfolios. You should too. Find out what they know. Call us and I'll send you 10 reasons why gold will do very well, free. 800-686-2237. 800-686-2237. That's 800-686-2237.
There's a man named Dr. Joel Wallach who is anything but your typical doctor, both a veterinarian and naturopathic physician. Doc asks, why does the United States spend more money on health care by far and still rank 50th in health and longevity worldwide? He believes that people should empower themselves with a basic understanding of nutrition, take charge of their health, and attain optimal health and longevity through nutrition, not by toxic prescription drugs that lead to side effects and more toxic prescription drugs. Doc Wallach's message is resonating with an increasing number of Americans who are waking up to all the big government, big pharma, and big insurance manipulation of our healthcare system. I'm George Norrie, and I like what Doc Wallach is saying and doing to enlighten people about health care. Visit brightsideben.com and listen to Doc Wallach's Deadly Recipes lecture. It makes a lot of sense, and I urge you to join the Brightside Ben team. Go to brightsideben.com. That's brightsideben.com.
For over 5 years, you've been hearing about the Berkey guy, so you may know a few things about him. For example, you are well aware of the superior quality and effectiveness of Berkey water filters and accessories. But did you know the Berkeys have had independent lab tests done to prove just how effective they are? It's true, and he can email you the test results. Just visit goberkey.com. You may also know that the Berkey guy has helped tens of thousands of people get better prepared. Now here's something you may not know. GoBerkey.com has amazing specials and deals all the time on a wide variety of survival and preparedness products. Most ready to ship same day. Visit the Berkey Guy at GoBerkey.com and be sure to click the red Products on Sale Now button. You can always call toll-free 877-886-3653. Again, that's 877-886-3653. GoBerkey.com, home of the Berkey Guy.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
The subject is Tom Adams, one of the unsung heroes of UFO research. Today, if you look for a magazine called Stigmata, you find something in the Russian language. Really, I looked it up. Are there any copies at all anywhere that one can find?
Boy, they're hard to come by. They're really hard to come by.
David has a complete set. Theo Pajams has a complete set in Holland.
I feel now compelled that since I was entrusted with getting this stuff out by Tom, that somehow I've got to get it all under one cover and get it out, maybe with no editorial comment or anything about it. It's just, okay, here it is. Here's what he published. It's all here. So I'm feeling very, very pressured, compelled, whatever, to go ahead and get that out, because I think there is a new wave of interest in his work that he's got.
Well, I think Tom's real notoriety, if you could even call Tom Adams having notoriety. But one of the things that I think most people out there who are aware of Tom, they're aware of him because of his work on the mystery helicopters. He did produce a very, very interesting and I think very important small publication called The Choppers and the Choppers, which is a listing of over 300 documented helicopter reports in and around mutilation sites. And it was invaluable for me in all my books. There were San Luis Valley reports that I included in my San Luis Valley books. There were just countless, hundreds, that many of them were referred to in Stalking the Herd. And I think that one particular subject held a particular fascination for Tom. I think he really, truly felt that there was a smoking gun connection between the mystery helicopters and the mutilation cases that were blistering the country all through the 70s, except for 72. And in up to this day, David just fielded a report that we'll talk about in a little bit from last week in Huérfano. But I do think, and David, if you'll comment on this, I do think that particular body of work probably is how most people who have heard of Tom would probably have heard of him about.
I totally agree, Chris. And we've discussed this at length, but Tom early on got onto the helicopters as part of whatever the mutilation phenomenon was. And very astutely, I don't know. I saw it because of the Colorado cases involved a lot of helicopters in the fall of 75. But Tom said, no, this is really, really significant. And of course, mixed in with those helicopters were numerous classic UFO saucer sightings. So really mixed it up there pretty good. But Tom said, I'm just going to focus on this helicopters. I want to do this report. And he prepared his initial, prototype report he submitted at Senator Schmidt's conference in April of 79 in Albuquerque, because it was an audience of lawmen, basically, and others assorted. But this is where he laid it out and said, here's what I have. I have 200 documented cases of helicopters in close proximity before and after these mutilation events. This is highly significant. Oddly enough, no helicopter was ever observed directly in conjunction with a mutilation, like with a cow hanging from below it or anything like that. But the timing of these things is case after case after case. And here's the helicopter was there the day before, and helicopter was heard that night, and helicopter was seen that next morning. What are these helicopters? Are they? Tom had several theories. It's like either the government was using the helicopters to do the mutilations, or that the mutilations were being observed by the government in these helicopters, trying to monitor what the event was, but they weren't actually doing it. This is another train of thought.
Or Linda's theory.
Or Linda's, she cites some cases where observers saw what appeared to be a UFO saucer-type craft morph into a helicopter and then morph back into a craft, which, is not absurd on the face of it, because I think one point of view that I look at it is like a lot of these events, I don't even call them mutilations, I call them manifestations, or materializations. It's a line of thought that I've been following that puts the mutilations more in the realm of the supernatural, basically. It's kind of funny to me that, so Tom comes up with all the helicopter stuff, and he keeps adding on to it over the years. And as you know, Chris, we relied on it really heavily in those sections of Stalking the Herd and piecing together stuff that happened in the early days back in Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, where the helicopters were rustling things, and then it turned to mutilations, and it was really very interesting research we were doing there, and it was all new stuff that hadn't been put together before, and that was all basically coming from Tom, his original poking into that stuff. But I find it kind of funny that in pop culture now, you hear it with the pundits on TV talking about political stuff, and they make this casual reference to this or that would appear to the black helicopter crowd. And so that is, pejorative, obviously. And I'm thinking, if they only knew that there is this black helicopter aspect to our society and our conspiratorial thinking about other stuff. Generally, the black helicopter crowd now is referred to people that think that the black helicopters are the UN, New World Order enforcers and that kind of thing. It's not really paranormal, but it's, definitely conspiracy theory. But in terms of our pursuit of the mutilations and whatnot, it's a definite factor. And over time, I see it as a larger and larger factor. And Tom recognized that immediately and ran with it, to his credit.
Yeah. We had Kevin Randall on the show. We just had him on the show. It was our last show, but we had him on a few months back. And, of course, Kevin is a helicopter pilot and served in Iraq, was in Vietnam. I tried to talk about his involvement with Alan Hynek and Jerry Clark early on in 71, monitoring some of the hog and cattle rustling that was going on. And then I asked him, I said, well, where did this whole meme of the black helicopter, where did it begin? Who was behind that? And he goes, I thought you were.
Oh, God.
Boy, he set me back in my chair. I was thinking to myself, me? No.
Oh, you did it for sure.
Yeah, it's all me. Yeah, I arrived in 93. The black helicopter meme was already going strong.
You were operating in secret, that's all.
Well, I got a call once from Jim Keith, of all people, who wrote Black Helicopters Over America. And this is early on in my investigative process back in late, I think the fall of 93. And he says, I'm going to be, in your area. Are you going to be available at such and such a time on such and such a day? I said, yeah, I'll make myself available. So I waited for his call, and I got a call, and he goes, okay, we're going to meet. And I said, okay, where? And he goes, the Safeway in Monte Vista? I said, yeah. He says, we're going to meet in the northeast corner.
A Safeway. You know what? There's a Safeway right here. I should go there and look for a black helicopter. We have David Perkins with Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast. Great minds think alike. The network for the independent-minded. The Genesis Communications Network. GCN.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter, and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code Night Owl. Use the coupon code Night Owl to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's LEMKE soft.com. lemkesoft.com. LEMKE soft.com.
Positive results from satisfied customers of Heart and Body Extract continue to pour into our website, hbextract.com.
This is Al from New Jersey. One day I saw your ad for Heart and Body Extract, and it mentioned that it would help me with angina, so I decided to order. I figure I had nothing to lose.
Heart and Body Extract supplies your body with everything it needs to balance itself and maintain optimal heart and circulatory health with no negative side effects.
I took the formula 3 times a day as directed, and I kid you not, within 4 days, my angina pain was completely gone.
Order HB Extract by calling 866-295-5305 or online at hbextract.com. That's 866-295-5305 or hbextract.com.
I could not believe it actually stopped the pain. Heart and Body Extract actually works. This is just an amazing product. Even the numbness in my hands is completely gone.
Heart and Body Extract for a long and healthy life.
Hi, this is Steve Sanchez, and based on a recent study, it was found that 57 million Americans had legal issues over the last 12 months, but only 60% of those studied sought out the services of a lawyer. Why? In a nutshell, affordability. Well, my friends at Legal Shield have created a solution that can help you not if, but when you need an attorney. For as little as $17 per month, Legal Shield will provide you unlimited access to qualified attorneys at an accomplished law firm for advice and counsel on legal issues, no matter how serious or trivial. Shield. For over 40 years and with 1.4 million families across North America, Legal Shield can help you, the loyal GCN listener. Representatives are standing by now to answer your questions, so call them now at 1-855-340-SAVE. That's 1-855-340-7283, or visit them at lsprotection.com. That's lsprotection.com.
Results will vary from case to case.
Attention taxpayers. If you've received a notice from the IRS or state, do not ignore it. It's also a big mistake to try and handle your tax problem on your own. If you owe back taxes, it's a fact that the government has the power to take everything you own, including your home, business, wages, savings, and your freedom. But here's the good news. There's a special toll-free tax hotline set up especially for you. This tax hotline will tell you about new programs that are geared to help you dramatically settle, reduce, or eliminate what you owe. But you have to call now. Take down this number or put it in your cell phone. But call 877-345-7645. That's 877-345-7645. When you call, you get free information on how you can reduce or eliminate back taxes, including penalties and interest. You can also be helped if you have unfiled returns, a tax lien, wage garnishment, bank levy, or if you've been entered into a payment plan but can't make the payments. Don't make the big mistake in thinking you can ignore or handle your tax problem on your own. You can stop the collection process immediately at 1-877-345-7645. That's 1-877-345-7645. 1-877-345-7645.
Hey, this is Marie D. Jones, the author of This Book is from the Future, and you are listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
Call it the Black Helicopter Cast or something. Seriously speaking, they also use the pejorative ET believers for people interested in UFOs. Okay, so a safe way, Chris O'Brien, you're going to meet this person? Tell me more.
Yeah, it seemed it was the only time I've ever had somebody, wait till the last minute to set up an actual place to meet. And I've never met anybody in a particular corner of a parking lot before. I felt it was highly conspiratorial. It seemed paranoid. I asked him, why the heck are we meeting here? And he goes, so we can't be overheard. I'm doing important work. At the time, I don't even think he had a working title for the book, but I think I am actually mentioned in there somewhere. I had a number of helicopter reports that I had dug into and talked about a little bit in my own writing in some of my early articles. And so he wanted to get more information about that. And it's been years since I read the book. I do think I'm included in there somewhere, but Kevin, you can't lay that all on me. I actually was reported as a black helicopter once. I was in a two-man dark purple helicopter, and the pilot let me fly it from Monte Vista, coincidentally, all the way back 60 miles to Crestone. And at one point I dove down and got real close to a herd of cattle, and evidently the rancher reported me, and the sheriff and a deputy tried to chase the helicopter down, and because they had to do the zigzag roads out there, they couldn't keep up. And the next day in the Rocky Mountain News, somebody said, oh, you got to get the paper. There was a black helicopter in the San Luis Valley yesterday, and the description is of a strange, mysterious helicopter that was harassing a herd of cows near Monte Vista. And I realized, oh my God, that was me.
Oh.
You made the news. Don't you feel proud of yourself?
Yeah. Mystery helicopter harasses herd in San Luis Valley. Oh my God. You remember that, David?
Yeah, that's too good.
Good. It was a two-man dark purple helicopter, which I guess looked black when you looked up at it from down below with a blue sky behind it. But yeah, this guy, it was rocky roads, man. He came down and rented a helicopter for the day, and I got to fly all around the San Luis Valley and videotape. It was just a wonderful day. But I just find it so ironic and highly humorous that I should be fingered as one of those mystery black helicopters harassing cattle herds. I'm surprised. I'm glad the guy didn't start firing at us.
Oh,
well, that's all you need. Then they make a story.
We have cases from several states where helicopters took fire, returned fire, and in one case, a team on the ground started firing at the rancher as well as the helicopter in the air. So the San Luis Valley, two deputies and a sheriff almost brought one down. They said it was starting to smoke and the engine sounded clanking, and according to the sheriff, he would be surprised if that helicopter made it back to Fort Carson because they literally tried to bring it down with gunfire.
Oh, wow. Helicopters.
Some fun there.
Yeah. Well, Tom, again, was the one that really alerted me to always be on the lookout for any sort of unusual aerial activity, be it conventional or otherwise. And as far as this whole thing about helicopters morphing into UFOs, I've got footage from the San Luis Valley camera project, some of the early footage that we got a number of years back, where you see a helicopter enter on the right side of the screen, and that canopy is illuminated by the sun at just the right angle, and it turns into a silver ball that scoots across the screen. If I had taken out the first second or two of the footage and then presented that, that would have been widely heralded as an amazing daylight silver, orb sighting because of the way the sun bloomed off the canopy. So appearances can be deceiving unless we really have, really good optics on something, especially multiple camera angles. There's no way that you're going to be able to determine much of anything if you're filming, even in daylight, with something within 5 miles away from you. Light can do so many strange things, especially on the curved canopy of a helicopter.
Do you think there's something supernatural here?
In terms of the mutilation phenomenon?
In terms of the helicopters?
I don't. Occam's razor. I think the simplest explanation is the one that I tend to go with. Prop wash, sound of engines, even silent helicopters, whipping trees around with the prop wash. These are mechanical devices, especially if they start firing back at you with small arms fire. Aliens don't have a habit of doing that, to my knowledge, using small lead projectiles projected at fast velocities. It's just not something that I equate. I think it's apples and oranges.
Therefore, E.T. does not have a Second Amendment.
What doesn't have?
E.T.
Oh. Well, I'm sure they have like exotic, particle beam weapons and, photon torpedoes. And, they've got to have something a little bit more developed and high tech than your regular 30-06,
And flying around in normal helicopters and abducting people and using very primitive instruments to engage in their various medical testing.
Well, evidently, with these implants, they don't have nanotech because they're leaving these large objects in people, supposedly, when all you needed to do was just to insert a stream of nanoparticles that could be self-organized and give you as much information as you want, even with our level of technology. So I don't know. It's just so much of it, just as David brought up earlier, it just has this real veneer of theatricality that permeates every aspect of this. And I think people oftentimes take things at face value and then assume certain explanations. With just a little bit of digging, a little bit of analysis, I think the average healthily skeptical person is going to be able to see that, the high strange explanation oftentimes really doesn't fit. And I think when it comes to the helicopters, we've had enough quality sightings by ex-Air Force guys that worked on helicopters, law enforcement individuals who've been around helicopters a lot, ex-military types, ex-pilots. We have too many good reports of helicopter activity from what you would think would be, highly informed and highly observant witnesses who know what they're looking at. If someone like that tells me, yeah, we had this helicopter spotlighting the ground, or in the case of last summer's cases in the Huerfano, there was 5 of them, if I remember correctly.
Right.
David, there's too much consistency when you look at helicopter reports in conjunction with mutilation sites. There's a lot of really good smoking gun evidence to tie those two seemingly divergent phenomena together at the hip. And UFOs masquerading as helicopters, that would be pretty low down on my list of probable suspects.
There's a very unusual thread in our forums at forum.theparacast.com. And we have someone who posted a message under the title, The Matrix. I guess you saw this, Chris, or maybe you didn't. He's talking about...
Is this a new thread? If it's a new thread, no, I haven't.
Okay, it was posted last night.
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay. Where he says folks are telling accounts of what they witnessed and the jerky, quick, and erratic, fast movements described And he said, it finally hit me, cursor movements by a computer programmer and tech. Therefore, we're seeing something here that represents a matrix reality, and that's what UFOs are. It's a cursor, moving cursors in our skies, I guess.
Yeah, that's got a nice ring to it.
Doesn't it? I mean, it's something that hit me and saying, you know what? This is interesting. Then maybe we're all creating UFOs then. As we use our personal computers, we're creating weird things in the sky. Or somebody is looking at a giant computer and generating this reality for us, for our benefit. And that starts a whole lineup of discussion, because this thread, by the way, it's called The Matrix at forum.theparacast.com. It started with, I guess, an innocent message, but there are some very interesting responses that I think our listeners should check out. Don't dismiss this unless, maybe you do believe in physical UFOs, but look at all the alternatives.
Yeah, that's why I really like our listenership and our forum posters. They're so creative and they're always thinking. It's a constant source of inspiration.
We got to think about breaking. With Gene and Chris and David Perkins, you're in
the Paracast. Not just an alternative to the mainstream media. We're the premier independent talk radio network. We are GCN.
Attack of the Rockoids has been well received by critics and readers alike. It's a thrill-a-minute story you'll never forget. A former U.S. military intelligence officer is haunted by intense dreams about a beautiful woman pleading for his help after a terrible battle in outer space. But the dreams turn out to be true and thrust him into a telepathic love affair with a woman whose faraway planet is intent on destroying the Earth. And now the gripping tale continues in The Coming of the Protectors. It's the second book of the Rockoids trilogy, a galaxy-spanning adventure that pits our hapless heroes against powerful, fanatical enemies that threaten the lives of freedom-loving beings everywhere. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Classic science fiction at its best, available now. For more details, visit rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com.
Hi, this is Sophie Winnick, longtime distributor and user of Longevity products. In the last few years, my family went through a crisis. Everything else in my life, including my business, had to be put on the back burner. Thankfully, life is getting back to normal now. But the one thing I never had to worry about was my business and my monthly commission. I've been a distributor for Longevity for over 17 years, since before it was Longevity. And I've got to say, the most amazing thing about this company is the people. While my family was in crisis, other distributors stepped in and helped my customers, simply because that's what Longevity people do, even for people they don't know. For me, it has never been about getting rich. It was about a product I could stand behind, a company I could count on, and a monthly commission check that has never, not once, been late in 17 years. Longevity is truly a business for everyone, even people who have too much to do. I'm Sophie Winnick. I'm just like you. I have a real life, real ups and downs, but I know I will always have Longevity.
We live in a complicated society. Stressful issues are always popping up. Have you ever been treated unfairly by someone? Have you ever been overcharged for a repair? Have you ever signed a contract or a document? Worried about identity theft? How many times have you been in those unique situations where you just wanted to call an attorney to find out if you're right or wrong, or what your legal rights are? But every time you think about calling an attorney, what do you think about first? That's right. Who do you call, and how much will it cost? Our friends at Legal Shield have found a solution. With a nationwide network of 6,900 attorneys who average 19 years of experience, Legal Shield's law firms take over 40,000 calls per week helping their members. For less than $20 per month, you can have access to Legal Shield on everything from the trivial to the traumatic. Let Legal Shield stand up for your rights at lsprotection.com. That's lsprotection.com. Or call 855-340-SAVE, 855-340-7283.
Results will vary from case to case.
You're fired. According to the Small Business Administration, 75% of small businesses plan to eliminate jobs or reduce workers' hours to part-time. You're fired. According to Gallup, the unemployment rate recently jumped to nearly 9%, and the underemployment rate hit a staggering 17.9%. You're fired. 1 out of 3 young adults and 1 out of 2 recent college graduates are underemployed. Hello, I'm Keith Abel, a pharmacist and a home business entrepreneur. In 2011, I became one of those statistics myself. Instead of looking for another job in corporate America, I joined Dr. Joel Wallach, the Dead Doctors Don't Lie guy. We're creating steady incomes for ourselves and would like to show you how to do the same. If you want to supplement your current income, replace your income, so you don't have to become one of the statistics, then give me a call toll-free at 866-257-3105, 866-257-3105.
You're fired.
Don't wait till you hear those words. Start creating an extra income today. 866-257-3105.
Hi, this is nuclear physicist lecturer Stanton Friedman. You are listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
With Gina and Chris, we have David Perkins. We're talking about the work of Tom Adams and how it's influenced a lot of our discussions. In our previous segment, I brought out this unusual forum thread at forum.theparacast.com about UFOs representing some kind of matrix-like phenomenon. But there are a lot of fascinating cases that we just barely scratched the surface on. And I gather you, David Perkins, have another case, a new case to talk about.
This is true. Last August, September, there were, I believe, 8 animals that were supposedly mutilated up in Colorado in Huerfano County, where I have a house up there. And I always find that a little odd. Things up there always seem to happen when I'm in Santa Fe, oddly enough. But they're right there at my front doorstep up there. So it's almost like somebody sending me a message or what here. I mean, probably coincidence. But there aren't that many mutilations these days anyway. I did cover those cases up there in an investigative series for the local newspaper. Just wrote it up as straight journalism. A lot of helicopter activity, a little bit of saucer activity, lasers on the ground, all kinds of things that were quite an interesting case, very involved.
And I must interrupt, David, and mention to our listeners that the 2 articles that he wrote won the best story of the year from the Colorado Press Association for a weekly newspaper for a series.
Yeah, it was called Investigative Package, was the official award. Best investigative package. Anyway, I just wrote it up as straight journalism, and I won that award. That was fantastic. I thought that was kind of interesting that the Colorado Press Association would even recognize mutilations as a legitimate something to investigate. I thought that was significant in its own way. So, okay, we had the cases up there August, early September of last year. Just in the last few days, I had a report of another mutilation up there in Huerfano County, about very close to the interstate, 200 yards at most, Interstate 25. Oddly enough, right under a camera that photographs the interstate for weather purposes, so you can get online and go there and see what's going on in the interstate. The camera, of course, wasn't trained on the area where the mutilation was. It was a 6-week-old black Angus calf. It had been castrated the week before and branded. It's like one of those cases that Chris and I call equivocal. The photos I've seen, I rounded up everybody's photos, and the ranch owner, who's a friend of mine, strangely enough. So it looked like there was some predator action on it at the least. But there are also a few things about it that didn't seem quite normal. From my eye, the rectum cut, the circular cut around the rectum area of a lot of these animals, it's kind of what we call classic. And it looked to be very smooth and precise. But as Chris and I know, that can be also the result of birds that can make something that look like that. One other little item, there's about a 4-foot diameter circle a few feet from the cow where something looked like it had been impressed into the dirt there. This is, again, who knows. But there didn't seem to be any other tracks or predator tracks or human tracks or tire prints or anything else. And like I say, this rancher, he's been in the ranching business all his life. He's an old-timer. He's seen everything. He knows what predators can do. And I asked him over and over, is there any possibility this could be predators? I mean, he said, nope, I've never seen anything like this in my life. And so you got to weigh that in. These guys, that's how they make their living. You know, they kind of know these things. And I put a lot of faith in their observations. But then again, this is not all that far from where the stuff happened last summer. So that was another indication that maybe they're related. Then just yesterday, I got a report that there had been another mutilation very close to where the last summer's activity took place. That happened apparently 3 weeks ago, and it just now came to light, which would have put it back around Easter, I guess. So that was one that the sheriff's department apparently didn't file an actual report on. The deputy went out there and looked at it and went, yeah, I don't know. They didn't file a report. The one that happened last week, there was a sheriff's report, brand inspector, everybody went out and looked at it. They're making their evaluations on it now.
Did you find out anything more about the laser? Because I remember the same pasture last August where the 8 animals were discovered. The prior March, there had been a report to the FAA about somebody painting airplanes with a laser from that exact location. Now, you mentioned something when you talked to me earlier about this case about a laser. Did you find out anything more?
No, that didn't pan out. I tracked it back, and they had mistaken. There was a second-party report, and they had mistaken the laser incident with the current one, but it wasn't as far as I could figure. But the one that you're referring to was exceedingly strange because what are the odds that you have this cluster of 8 mutilations? And the previous spring, the FAA had several reports of somebody shining lasers at airlines flying over, which is, you would have thought that would have made the news. It's kind of a big deal. But the GPS coordinates of where that laser was coming from happened to be where the mutilations were found, a few months later. So I just can't think of a scenario that makes sense with any of that.
We're talking really remote, BS nowhere type locations here. We're not talking about some suburban area.
Right.
I mean, this is miles and miles of pasture land, very few trees, no places to hide, very few roads. And what roads are there are usually, ranch roads that have gates and locks on them.
Yeah, so this laser thing really, really intrigued me. And you, Chris, went after it with the FAA, and they were very unhelpful. And we could not get any further with it. But we do have the reports that the FAA said, call the sheriff's department, said, go out to this location and see what's going on. Somebody's shooting lasers at our airline pilots on at least 2, probably 3 occasions. From that exact spot where the mutilations were found the following August. I believe that the lasers were either March or April. But so no lasers on these current cases. But we have something that at least the rancher thinks is unusual. I'm 50-50 on it. I had the circle. I don't know what could have created that circle, and nobody has any good idea what created the 4-foot circle. I should add that these 4-foot circles were seen in conjunction with another mutilation in Huerfano County, several of them actually a few years back in the La Vida area. The guy said it looked like a tractor tire had been, impressed, and it was into the pretty deep grass. Same 4-foot circle, basically. So we got that. We got what looks like smooth cutting on the rectum area. We've got a mangled cow. From what the deputy said, at least, nobody else seems to have looked in the mouth of this animal, but when the deputy, Clint Bowler, went out there, he pried the mouth open and looked in there and said, yep, they got the tongue. It's cut straight across in the back with a straight cut. Yep.
There you go, folks. Clear indication that the cattle mutilation scenario has not ended yet. David Perkins, can you tell listeners what you're working on and where they can find more of your work, perhaps?
Well, why don't they just go on that Google machine there and punch it up? And plus, read all Chris O'Brien's books. A lot of my stuff goes into his prefaces and forewords and main body of the work. We work on those things together a lot. It's there. It's findable. And, yeah, sure, go look it up.
As you see, folks, just recalling what Tom Adams did for everyone gets you into a rich area of UFO and paranormal-related research. You can find us on Twitter. We're known as the Paracast. Look for the Paracast on Twitter. Look for 2 Paracast fan clubs on Facebook. And some people have been written to me said, well, it's very easy to merge them. Yes, you can merge them, but you kill the content with one of them. We have that second radio show after the Paracast. Go to plus.theparacast.com, plus.theparacast.com, to learn how to subscribe to Paracast Plus and download that new radio show plus the enhanced version of this show. And if you subscribe for 1 year or more, you will get a free copy of Chris O'Brien's Stalking the Tricksters, the ebook version. And by the way, if you go to Chris's site, OurStrangePlanet.com, you can make a donation there to the San Luis Valley Camera Project, and Chris will be posting updates real soon now. We've been remembering the exciting work over the years from Tom Adams and how he influenced a whole generation of UFO and paranormal researchers. David Perkins, thanks for joining us on the Paracast.
Thank you, Gene. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Izzy. Appreciate it.
The Paracast, featuring Gene Steinberg and Christopher O'Brien, is a copyrighted presentation of Making the Impossible, Incorporated. Tune in next week for a new adventure in The Paracast.